The terrestrial order, the order of the earth, consists of things that take on a permanent form and provide a stable environment for dwelling. They are the things of the world. They give stability to human life. The terrestrial order is today being replaced by the digital order. The digital order de-rarefies the word by informatizing it. Decades ago, the media theorist Vin Flosser remarked, non-things are currently entering our environment from all directions, and they are pushing away the things. These non-things are called information. We are today experiencing the transition from the age of things to the age of non-things. Information, rather than things, determine the life world. We no longer dwell on the earth and under the sky, but on Google Earth and in the cloud. The world is becoming increasingly intangible, cloud-like and ghostly. There are no tangible and arrestable things. This is the opening to Korean-born German philosopher Byung Chul Han's work, Non-Things, Upheaval in the Life World. In this episode of Servile Age, my guest Gutsavo and I will be exploring, elaborating, and trying to explain the condition of things, non-things, and how they relate to human life. And with that, we begin. Gutsavo, how you doing?
Hi, Caleb. Thanks for having me. I'm feeling awesome. I'm very excited to talk about this book. My first Byung Chul Han book, and I think it's going to be awesome. It's an awesome book, and I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Absolutely. I've yet to find a bad book from Han. He might have a chapter that I don't understand, but even if I don't understand, there's always at least one paragraph or one segment that I'm like, no, that's on the money. That's incredible. It's just, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the most interesting philosopher alive today, Byung Chul Han.
Yeah, definitely. For a first time reading him, I've got the feeling he's a great companion. And I think the most important thing you can ask from an author, from any books of any genre, is for him to be a good companion and a good friend. That's why no matter how much data there is in a book, if there isn't a feeling of partnership between you and the author, it's not a worthwhile book to read. And it's an idea which is very related to the book we are going to discuss today.
Absolutely.
But I think Han, as far as I can tell, is someone who really cares about having a reading experience which is much more holistic than simply exposition.
We will get into that when we get into his comparison between physical books and ebooks, which is a fascinating little section. So how does, anyone listening, how does, 2 seconds before we get fully into it, how does it go is Han is very dense prose. I don't recommend, I look at people read him, but if you're going to read him, you need to have a good knowledge, these are a passing knowledge of like Heideggerian thought, some postmodern thought. He ties in a lot of different authors. He ties in movie criticism. He ties in art history and modern artists, photography. There's a lot there from history. It's what's the word here? It's multi.
It's very eclectic, I would say.
Eclectic, yeah, that's definitely eclectic. So I recommend people read him, but if you're going to read him, you got to start in a certain order. I would say at least you got to read Burnout Society and Agony of Eros first. Then you can start to understand the rest of his critiques, have a good understanding of so these are a passing understanding of postmodern, a passing understanding of Heidegger. And so because of that, we are going to be quoting him directly a lot. There will be long segments of this where we're just reading quotes from Han. Towards the end, we will actually be probably reading 2 whole pages and maybe even a whole chapter because there's just so much. He's so dense and he's so beautiful with his prose. It feels wrong to not read him directly. One thing I want to say about Han before we get right into it is a little bit about Han. He was born in Korea. He went to Germany to study metallurgy and right there discovered a love of philosophy, and where he is now a German philosopher who goes back to Korea pretty often. So he's a Korean-born German philosopher. He's very German in the sense that they have a tradition in German philosophy or German writing of making up new words or phrases. And they can do that. English is not great for that. So there might be times where you like, that doesn't sound perfectly. Let's imagine, remember, it's in German. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the German words. One thing that Han is not he's not private about, but his books don't touch on it specifically, is that Han is a Catholic. That is something I think to keep in mind, is that there is an undercurrent of Catholic sacramentality in regards to the communion and saints. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, a Christian view of we have of being, of sayings, and of communion. Just kind of keep that as we undergo the study. Any little preamble you want to give, Gutsavo?
Oh, I think you're dead on. I think Han has that perfect bridge where he has that German, very philosophical mind, that German language, which is really strong in conveying ideas, terms, and abstract concepts, and that Korean reality of being in the center of the 21st century and its whole madness, which I think Korea, Japan, and the overall region of East Asia is a pretty much good example of what our societies are quickly becoming and what they have actually become.
Yeah, there's a whole conversation to be had on Korea as the example of late of. I'm not again. People will use this term late stage capitalism to describe the neoliberal capitalist order. I don't like that term because it implies a definite end, as if late stage implies it is inevitably going to end. I do think at the end of it in some way, shape, or form is going to happen, but it's not at all inevitable. And it kind of smuggles in a Marxist determinist view of capitalism. So we won't be using the term late stage capitalism. Han does not use late stage capitalism. He refers to it as the neoliberal capitalism. And I think that's a pretty fair description, especially from his perspective of seeing how modernity shaped Korea. Okay. Let's get into this. First quote here. This is from the first chapter, From Sayings to Non-Sayings. Sayings stabilize human life insofar as they provide a continuity that lies in the fact that men, their ever-changing nature notwithstanding, can retrieve their sameness, that is, their identity, by being related to the same chair, the same table. Sayings are the calm centers of life. They have been wholly enveloped by information. Information is anything but calm center of life. It is not possible to linger on information. It is relevant only fleetingly. It lives off its capacity to surprise. Information's fleetingness alone can account for the fact that information destabilizes life. It constantly attracts our attention. The tsunami of information agitates our cognitive system. Information is not a stable, uniform entity. It lacks the solidarity of being. Nicholas Luhmann characterizes information thus: its cosmology is a cosmology not of being, but of contingency. And this is my little note on that to kind of help explain it. Our identity, or even our ability to tell what we are, and I, is not a realization that comes out of our mind. Rather, it is the recognition of things that are real yet not me. Think of Jacques Maritain critical realism. Thoughts themselves are reactive to outside stimuli. Now, taking a step further, the clothes we wear, the styles, our aesthetic, our environment shape our perception of ourselves. Think of a niche construction evolution. You know how the woodpecker likes a certain type of bug, so it eats the bug then goes into the tree. The woodpecker then its beak has to evolve to be denser so it can puncture through the tree. And in response, the tree bark grows thicker, and you have the cycle of the environment influencing the evolution of the animal. You think of that as a concept of how we develop through our social norms, communication, accents. These all form in a reciprocal nature between the individual and his environment. It's a dialectical process in which we find our identity. Another example, think of the Jean Baudrillard system of objects as kind of another take on this principle. Any thoughts, Gutsavo?
I think the one of the key, most primordial ideas of Han in this book is this idea of grounding, as objects are kind of the bedrock of experience because we can directly experience and return to that same experience with physical sensations in the real world. So he's going to use a lot of examples in this book, but what I think it's somewhat fascinating is this idea that you can have, for instance, a wall, and you painted it, and you missed a spot, or a spot was not painted correctly, so you have a yellow stripe in a white wall. And, this object becomes a referencing point in your house. Oh, it's that room with the wall with the yellow stripe. And in that sense, objects function as a pole of experience.
Mhm.
And because we live in a complex world with a lot of objects, we have a lot of poles to ground our experiences around. So, I particularly feel a lot of ways about my own city. And I think everyone, who knows uh, his own city well enough can point, to points of reference where the city moves around, the bus station, the primary school of the university, or these kind of things. And in our own lives as well, we can have objects which we had one time but we disposed of in another time. So, that childhood toy which brings us back to our childhood, or that old house that we lived in which brings us
Mhm.
back to our bringing up our childhood. And Hans is discussing here this idea that information is the exact opposite of that, because information is based in novelty, not in recurrence or grounding. It fundamentally takes us away from that pole, so that uh,
It's not
how.
narrative. It's not narrative. It's additive.
Oh yeah, and that's a big point also, because we kind of mentioned this tangentially, but this book is very interconnected to the his other books, and of course, Crisis of Narration, Hans' other book is gonna come after this one. He's gonna write it after this one. I don't know how much he had already written of uh, disappearance of rituals while he was writing non-things, but it's a very big theme in both books, because uh, things have you know become non-things, and by this process lost narrative. You can't find the story uh, of a thing you see on the internet. It quickly disappears from your feed, and you don't think about it again for a substantial amount of time. But usual things carry with it a history of how you interacted with it, of how someone interacted with it, or how other objects related to it. And so be, uh, things are these grounds of stability, because they suffer effects, they occur relationships, while information is this chaotic assessment of data, which really doesn't ground anything, and it's just there for a fleeting moment for you to grasp, or to feel a quick sensation, or rush, and then move on to the next things, because it lives of novelty.
I got a great example to kind of illustrate this. On my road trip back from Alaska, I stopped in Missouri and saw a buddy of mine. Right, only known him online. First time meeting him in person. He picked me up, left my car somewhere, and we just drove. We drove to a bar. And while driving, he pointed out every block had a story. He lived in that town his whole life. Every block, he's like, my ex girlfriend crashed a car over there. I know a guy who got shot over there. This thing happened here. This thing happened there. Like he's recounting narratives of the town to me. He could have texted every single one of those stories to me, and they would have simply been additive into my view as the individual, as my friend. But because they were given to me in the context of the location, of the actual sayings, the story was no longer it was actually a narrative being presented. It was not just additive information to a already preconceived view of an individual.
Yeah, I think there is a very great point to be made, that the information age is a good and somewhat, I don't know if we could say, necessary development, or natural development of consumer capitalism, because what mass scale production oriented was, make a lot of things cheap. And when you make things the same, when you standardize your mode of production, it becomes cheaper and therefore more efficient. And what is information if not this mass scale production taken to another level? Because now you don't even have the physical thing. You just have this information which is unable to be grasped and to be experienced for a long period of time. So you can have constant production and constant consumption because you are kind of making away with the idea of scarcity. And there's a lot to unpack there, but something I would like to highlight is how, for instance, we used to have architecture is very fun to me. It's very close to the heart. We used to have great homes which were beautiful, which were handcrafted, which are usually built by guilds who had traditions, certain modes of operating, different cultures. But consumer capitalism, mass scale capitalist production, uh, kind of uh, with its efficiency, drove out the old modes of doing things and ended up producing a lot of very equal standard things. So you have in socialism you have your commie blocks, which are uninspired residencies for the masses. In the West, we are not that different. You can think of suburbia or apartments. So housing has lost its specificities, its links to tradition, to your culture, your history, etc. It's just become a mass production thing. And when you take it to the next step, you get the metaverse, you get the internet, which are places which are not places which we treat like places. So
Yeah.
you don't even have the place anymore. You just have the idea of place of cyberspace,
Mhm.
something which has no tangible reality, but is more real than the real. It's Baudrillard. It's hyper reality.
Yes. No, I don't know if you ever done it, but if you ever get a chance to have like use a VR headset and go into a VR chat room, it's a surreal experience. Because I've done it a few times. I can recount to you very detailed stories of things that I have seen and been a part of in these VR spaces. I cannot describe to you the atmosphere at all. I have no memory of what the rooms, the virtual rooms look like, what the virtual characters look like. It's all just disembodied voices in memory. Because those are the only real things in there that actually add to the narrative. Because everything else is just it's a passing non-saying.
Yeah,
It's
the cyberspace is not the home for people, is the home for information. And
Mhm.
information, as Han talks, is this ghostly thing. It's this untangible fleeting phenomena which can't be grasped, can't be looked back at, it can't be projected into the future. It's just something for the moment. And
Mhm.
I think we're gonna talk about this later, but this is McLuhan basically. This is gonna shape
Yep.
us more than we shape it. So this idea that our dwelling places, our temporary spaces, is the abolishment of property. You don't own your house anymore. You rent it, or in the future, you don't need to live anywhere. You work in the cloud. You work in the hyper reality, so to speak.
This is why well, I have a note later about the tiny house fad that's taking off in America.
Yeah,
There's a lot to be said about that and the minimalist aesthetic and the functional aesthetic that Baudrillard talks about in System of Objects. Well, to anyone listening, that's another book that I would say um, it doesn't. It how to put it? I can't find a single reference to it in this book, a nonsense from Han, but it feels very much like a spiritual successor to the same observations that Baudrillard made in the System of Objects.
well, I think he does talk about Baudrillard, and I think
When
Baudrillard,
in this book?
yeah, if I'm not
Where did
mistaken,
I
he
must
does.
have completely yeah I must have completely missed that part.
But anyway, I think the more compelling thing to me, at least, is he talks about McLuhan. I'm big on
The
McLuhan
medium is the
myself.
message. The medium is the message.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna read the passage where he talks about McLuhan.
Oh, please, I can't wait to get to that. Do you have anything from the first chapter? Any quotes you want to bring up in the first chapter? I got a few
No,
more.
not exactly. You can go
Okay,
ahead.
this is a great one. The call of the future will no longer be a thing that is associated with fantasies of power and possession, but a mobile center for the distribution of information. That is an information that communicates with us. The call speaks to you, informs you spontaneously about its general condition and about yours. It may refuse to function if you do not function well. It gives advice and takes decisions. It is a partner in a comprehensive negotiation over how to live. Now, my note here. A friend of mine has a Tesla, right? It has a self-driving feature. He was in it with his girl, and they were talking, making out, kissing, all that kind of stuff. And he looked away one too many times, and the Tesla beeped at him and said it would permanently disable the self-driving feature if he looks away one more time, which is insane to think about.
I remember there's a very good quote from Han in this. I don't know. I don't remember if it is in this or the next chapter, where he talks about, smart homes were sold as this idea, which is you are in charge of everything in your home with your voice, with your hands, and if you really come to terms with it, it's not you that is commanding the home, it's the home that is commanding you. You're getting, I saw this news recently, we are getting ads on your smart fridges. Yeah, okay, that's
Burn it all down.
reasonable.
Burn it all down.
These are the things which vindicate Ted Kaczynski.
Yes, have you seen the drone commercials in China? You can't even look at the night sky. They have drones that have like billboards.
Yeah, the things about this so-called smart TVs, smart cars, smartphones is that they are not made to empower you. Is that they are made to dispense information and to acquire information. They are vehicles. They are working instruments of the mega machine of information, of the realm of known things. And we could make a Nick Land connection about there's nothing human makes it out of the future, because the whole future is just information. And I think there's a lot of people who want that, but there's also a lot of people say, nah, I think I'm on the human side, dog.
Yeah, I got this as a quote here. It's not for Han. This is my continuation of my note. As more technology is outfitted with means of observation, the more it can assist you in using it well. The move from aid to master is a subtle one. When phones were invented, they aided in our efforts for communication, but simultaneously we became subservient to the phone, for we have to answer when it rings.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's how do I put this? So people, I have a hard time defining technology, right? For me, it's a very difficult thing to define. Because in a sense, you could say anything that's a tool is in a form like, a bow and arrow is technology, right?
Yeah.
But there was a switch from the moment technology once technology was given a voice, it began to exert its control over us in some way. And it's unnerving to think about, because I think about people who wear those smartwatches to bed so they can monitor their sleeping habits.
Yeah, there is nothing scary at all about that. Your sleep has been turned into data for being harvested. Okay, that's not creepy at all.
Yeah, I have the quote here from Han on the smart home. Let me read this real quick.
Okay.
In the smart home, informatons take care of us. They make sure everything is cared for. The inhabitant of the smart home is carefree. The telos of the digital order is probably the overcoming of that care which Heidegger takes to be the characteristic trait of human existence. Dasein is care. Artificial intelligence is currently busy completely decaring human existence. By optimizing life and doing away with the future as source of care, that is, by overcoming the future's contingency, we have a predictable future in the form of the optimized present. We need not care. So a few things on this. One, the smart home and all these ways of the moment the machines can observe us, you have a panopticon right there. That's how that is a panopticon, as Foucault talked about. The ultimate prison. We kind of, in a sense, the smart home is a smart prison, which is a quote Han has in the book that I did not save, unfortunately. Anyone who thinks the idea that we have a predictable future in the form of an optimized present saying is insane. I have a little illustration here I wrote out. Let me read it real quick. This may sound like a crazy take from Han. That's because our present state is so good that our present state is so good that we won't care about the future. But let me make an example. The prince of a kingdom is so well cared for, he need not worry about the future as long as his kingdom exists. He will be well taken care of. The son of a billionaire, even if he never works, can coast of the success of his parents. These may seem like extreme cases, but I am sure you are thinking, oh, but they were rich, so they could afford to live like that. Well, what is wealth if not a means of organizing one's circumstances? If our circumstances can be optimized by technology, then we are now existing in the same exact state as the prince and the billionaire's son. The security and power that money provided them will be provided for us by machines, information, and technology. Think Wally.
This is something that I think is very particular to Han, and I think you can expand on that based on his other books. But this idea that comfort is what is going to kill liberty, a lot of authors talked about this, but in the modern sense, in the modern world, so to speak, we are kind of accustomed to this idea that technology is going to make everything better and everything's going to be okay. But I think, as Han puts out, you're going to, as a person, be increasingly powerless in the world. You're not going to, be able to do things. Things are going to do themselves, or maybe better, there is not going to be any things at all. So when we put,
go ahead.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was thinking about the information. He said, "Do things do." I started thinking about the nightmare scenario of an AI fuckbot that would then give you information and feedback on your way you fuck.
Yeah.
And just the complete informatizing of the sexual act is
and there's something to that which we are going to get about later, because sexuality is something that Han has discussed in his other books, but he actually talks about it in this book also.
Anyone listening for more upon takes on the on love, sexuality, and eros, Cato and I did an episode just like this one, same kind of long notes, same kind of introduction on the agony of eros, which I still think is Han's best book. It's incredible. It's so good. So everyone, I'll put a link for that in the description if anyone wants to go check that out for more details on Han's view of the agony of eros in the modern age. One thing I think about a lot is Han to me feels very much, how do I put this in the right way? A Landian element in Han, and they seem to be observing the same things about the inevitability of how capitalism and technology reshape humanity, and that Han seems to be much more melancholic about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I don't know if that's I feel like that's probably a temperament thing of the Koreanness, but he has a whole book called "Capitalism and the Death Drive," which just feels like a Nick Land essay, and it's in the title, kind of in the title.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
there's
something about this dichotomy between Nick Land and Byung Chul Han, because Han is from Korea and he moved to Germany, and Nick Land is from, I think it's UK, and moved to China.
Yes.
So you have this opposite direction and opposite political thinking.
Yes, it is. That's a conversation that's a conversation I would love to see.
Yeah.
But Han doesn't do interviews. I think Han has done one interview, actual on video interview. He's done 2 written interviews and a video interview and his documentary. That's it. And his video interviews are only 5 minutes long. He's a very private person.
Yeah.
Which is good. I think that's definitely deliberate. I don't think that's a temperament thing either. I don't think his privacy is a temperament thing. I think it's much more like he doesn't want a bunch of information out about him that people can use to think they can understand him and his views by just consuming information about him through smartphones. It seems like a conscious decision reflecting his work rather than a temperament of wanting to be private.
Yeah, true.
Okay, I got a quote here. The infosphere is Janus' face. For those who don't know, that was the Roman god with the 2 faces, It gives us more freedom, but at the same time, it exposes us to more surveillance and control. Google presents the interconnected smart. I did say this quote. Google presents the interconnected smart home of the future as an electronic orchestra, with the inhabitant as a conductor. In truth, however, what the author of this digital utopia describes is a smart prison. In a smart home, we are not autonomous conductors. Instead, we are conducted by various actors and invisible actors that dictate rhythm. We expose ourselves to a panoptical gaze. A smart bed fitted with various sensors continues the surveillance even during sleep. In the name of convenience, surveillance gradually creeps into everyday life. The informatons that free us from so much work turn out to be an efficient informants that surveil and control us in the way we become incarcerated in the infosphere. In a world controlled by algorithm, the human being gradually loses the power to act, loses autonomy. The human being confronts a world that resists efforts of comprehension. He or she obeys algorithmic decisions which lack transparency. Algorithms become black boxes. The world is lost in the deep layers of neuronal networks which human beings have no access. For anyone thinking this might sound insane, go watch the movie Wall-E and keep this paragraph in mind. That is the future. I'm convinced it's not cyberpunk. It's not Nick Land's accelerationism. The future is so humans are so fat and dependent on machines, they become more like pets for machines to care for than the actual actors in charge. Unless things change, that's where this is all heading.
Yeah, and I think that's the diagnosis that Nick Land kind of nailed it when he said nothing human makes it out of the future, because everything is made of, with this veneer of convenience of, we're gonna make life easier, faster, more efficient, and etc. But it's a whole process of disempowering humans, of making them unable to comprehend the things that they interact with. You can think of, as he said, black box algorithm, or more recently, black box AIs. We don't know how this thing functions. You had that whole Shoggoth meme, with the AIs, because it is so interconnected with data. It functions so alienly to a human that we can't possibly come to understand it in its entirety only when we interact with it. So it's disempowering to humans to have to interact with something incomprehensible, but that is also, it's not really gaining us anything other than, comfort, but it doesn't speak to the human needs in the big sense of needs and not the low sense of needs,
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Man, how good is Han? Just
Is
how
awesome.
we got this for the listener. That's going to be a common refrain from this. He's so great. I don't think there's not a more interesting. Nick Land is fascinating. Don't get me wrong. Alexander Dugan is fascinating. Curtis Yarvin has some fascinating ideas, but Byung Chul Han is the most interesting philosopher alive today. I can't think of another author who is. There's nothing like him. I can't think of he's just fascinating. I think that wraps up the first chapter from Sings to Non-Sings. Do you have any final thoughts on that chapter before we go into the next one?
Yeah, I think we're gonna continue to see this idea of grounding as a central theme in this book is gonna permeate the other chapters, and that's something to keep in mind as we go to the other discussions.
Absolutely. Man, we're only one chapter in and we're 30 minutes in. This is going to be a long one, everyone. Buckle up.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to quote you from chapter 2. From processing to experiencing. Understood abstractly, experiencing means consuming information. Today we prefer experiencing to possessing. Being to having. Experiencing is a form of being. TV programs is a cast in the addict, which we don't really have in the States, so think of pawn shops or pawn stores. As Cats in the Attic will demonstrate this impeccable change of paradigm. We painlessly, almost heartlessly, part ways with things that were previously close to our hearts. It is telling that most of the people on the program wanted to use the money they received from the traders for traveling, as if travels were rituals of separation from things. The memories stored in things have suddenly lost all value. They have to give way to new experiences. It seems that people are no longer able to dwell with things or to imbue them with life and make them their faithful companion. Things close to the heart presuppose an intense libidinal tie. Now we no longer want to be tied to things or people. Times are untimely. They restrict the spaces for possible experiences. That is freedom and the sense of consumption. Here's my little note on this. Freedom today only means freedom to experience and consume. People abort their young rather than abort their young, break up, or cut off loved ones so they can be free to consume and experience. I saw a video on TikTok the other day. This woman put her 7-year-old up for adoption so she could travel in an RV. I'm not making that up. I hope it's fake. I really hope it's fake. Consume and experience. The minimalist aesthetic and the fad of tiny houses point to this, being able to pack up and go. Today, freedom does not mean being free from that which corrupts the will. Rather, it is freedom from things that bind. As Han said earlier, we do not exist on the earth below in the sky, but on Google Earth and in the cloud. Digital picture frames are another example of this. A picture printed out is a story. The story of when it was taken, how it is stored, how it was discovered again. Some old scrapbook on the boxes of hand-me-down clothes in the attic of a loved one offer a concrete connection and a through line through time tying to people in that photo. Today, digital picture frames present us with a slideshow of snapshots flashing from one memory to the next, leaving no room to contemplate or remember before being shown the next memory. Its purpose is closer to a remedy for amnesia, flashing shots from one's past, seeking to remind us who we are. And this is such a great part from Han. The whole on this part here, he says about I think one of the things that gives way to this selling anything that has a close tie or a value for travel is it's peak boomerism and selling everything to go on cruise instead of leaving anything for your family. The idea of the heirloom is gone because of the selfishness of a class of a certain generation. I don't necessarily think it's necessarily how to put it. I don't think boomers are definitely willful actors, but I think they are passive receivers of a mentality that was brought forward by a system of mass production. I don't necessarily impart them with like any originator of this evil, rather they are the passive actors of a system that embedded these ideals.
Yeah, I think this chapter really speaks to the idea which we were discussing previously of things as ground for experience. And yes, it is going to come again and again because it is the fundamental definition of things. Things are, the ground of experience. And what is experience? You can't have experience without memory. And people have started not caring about memory and moving on to the next thing is the great new thing.
The novelty of it all.
Yeah. And he says it. Non-things are information, and information are about novelty. So you think, for instance, about a social media feed. It is not something to be sturdy. You have a post, it inevitably fades away in order of the new posts or the most, interactive posts of the week. And the algorithm functions in that way to, prioritize new stuff instead of the old stuff. And it's a kind of inversion of the nature of things, because if you think about regular things, we tend to imbue more meaning to things which are older or that have a longer history. As you well said, heirlooms, but we could also think, about relics, about, landmarks.
I got a whole thing about relics later on. That's gonna be you're gonna love it. It's so good.
Yeah, and these things that have meaning and history are what is dear to us. But these things, these non-things which have no grounding in history and past, seems to be the new order of what we interact with daily.
Yeah, it's like we said earlier, human beings are not. We don't form ourselves in vacuums. Okay, you are born into a time and place. You are born into a community. There is an incarnational aspect of existence. and you're not incarnated into a vacuum, into a void. You are not man in the wilderness. You are not a noble savage. You are born into a time and a place and a people, and that all shapes who you are. And if you slowly remove things that are part of that process of shaping, you begin to shape a new type of person.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't like the new people that are being shaped. And this is one thing I really like about Han, is that how do I put this? So much of the right is still kind of points to individuals as like actors in these processes, has like the new world order types, the names of the elites, and that is good. I do believe in elite theory, but what I like about Han is he speaks about it more as a system that is achieving these ends, rather than it being conscious actors that are perpetrating it. I don't know what's I think these conscious act like you own nothing to be happy about it. New world order types. I more believe they are more passive recipients of a force. Think more like demonic possession if the demon was the system of capitalism itself.
Yeah, the thing about these people is they are, of course, moved by some sort of spirit. You can say some sort of daemon or egregor or some sort of idea, which is kind of a virus, which we could discuss about what it is, but we could also synthesize it, in the egalitarian project, and they are not so much directed, active directly active in this process. You're not going to have Klaus Schwab directly tell you what to do, but they put in motion those huge unpersonal systems which are going to direct you.
Yeah.
So you have it goes two ways. People can direct too much hate towards the system or towards the people running the system, and we kind of lose this connection. They are kind of interconnected. One
Yes.
causes the other relates to us. There's
I
this
think, the,
whole
I think a great analogy for this is H.P. Lovecraft ideas of the otherworldly demon that can't really enter into the world, but it is the ultimate villain. But the villains
yeah
are also the cult members that worship and follow it. And whether
yeah
those cult members they really entered into the system of servitude with the system, but they slowly lose their will and just become extensions of the creature itself.
yeah
And
that's
it's,
a good analogy.
again, thank God for Nick Land. I would not. Nick Land's incorporating of H.P. Lovecraft into political theory and philosophy opens up so many different avenues for thought.
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft, man, what a fascinating also. Okay, I got another quote here. It is far more difficult to possess information than it is to possess things. This leads to the impression that information belongs to everyone. Possession relates to the paradigm of the saying. The world of information is controlled not by a possession, but by access. Attachment to things, or places replaced with temporary access to networks and platforms. The Syrian economy weakens the identification with this. That is the heart of possession. Possession is based on being sedentary. The constant compulsion to move makes it harder to identify with things and places. Things and places also have less and less influence on the formation of our own identities. Identity is today primarily produced through information. We produce ourselves on social media. The French expression, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in French, to play to the gallery. We stage ourselves and we perform our identities. My little quote on this, my little note on this. Here, Han speaks to the loss of roots. In times past, men were formed by the community, from values to norms to accents. Today, the same processes exist, but it's through digital communities, algorithms, not accents, fandoms, not norms. The comment section forms the new town square where identities and values are formed, isolated and informed. I can only imagine how much worse this process is for those who during their formative years were locked out of the last real communities, the schools, when they were all shut down during COVID-19. That next generation is going to be, talk about starting off on a rough foot.
Yeah, it breaks my heart, man. I really think the COVID was a horrible thing. We're not denying that the thing was real,
No.
but it was so overboard, man.
Hmm.
So much evil was done in the name of so-called protection of everyone that it's really hard to look back at it. I think it's going to be the great psychological thread of our generation,
Hmm.
and it's going to affect us in deep ways, which we are starting to formulate why and how, but in a lot of ways it's going to linger unconsciously in us. It's going to
That's
be a very formative
that's two things I think
process.
about with COVID. Is one, I recognized I got way more comfortable with isolation under COVID. I used to be much more social, always trying to plan something, always going out, inviting people over, going to people's houses, trying to plan meets and stuff. After COVID, got everyone. I think everyone, myself included, got way too comfortable with digital communication, isolation as a stand-in, and because it is so much easier to just hop on a Discord call than plan a hangout, I
Yeah.
think that there's a real loss of actual community. That is just, I don't know how that comes back. It will have to come back. I think this might be what I did from Han. I think there is a breaking point in which the human will snaps back against this and starts trying to find itself, find new forms of communities and incarnational realities. Um, but when will that be, and when is the breaking point? And is that a thing that everybody has, or is that a thing only certain people have? And how much, because I do believe in natural slaves, some people just aren't capable of that kind of thought or that kind of breaking of the norms. But I also think the digital life has so. I think there's actually more natural slaves today than at any other point in history. I don't necessarily think there are people today who are natural slaves who wouldn't be in times past, but because they have been shaped so much by this digital non-sync process, they were subsequently transformed into what Aristotle would call a natural slave. I,
I think there is something to Han. I haven't read the book, but he has a new book on hope and pessimism and stuff. And he
or
talks
skeptic.
about something, I can't remember the exact wording he has, but it's like how to be a hopeful pessimist. This idea that things are getting bad, but there's still hope. And hope is, it's not that assurance, is the idea that things could get different, that
Mhm.
there is a solution even though it doesn't look we are heading to that solution.
As a little
So
nod to my heavily Catholic audience, we have to dare to hope sometimes.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms there. But the Data Hope from Balthazar, I actually love it. I don't know about you, but I love Data Hope from Balthazar. That's a theological conversation to have when we're not talking
yeah.
Han. Um,
Coming back to Han a little bit, this excerpt you just talked about, talk about you own nothing and be happy, because Han has this thing that the kind of so-called oppression from modern capitalism is very uncharacteristic. It's a new type of uh, suggestion that is not based on force but based on consent. I think you can talk about this a bit more based on his other books, but here is this idea that you own nothing and be happy, because you will want to own nothing, because you will be constantly fed this stream of new information which is going to overwhelm you so much, so that you're not going to find the point in possessing things, in having property. This is the final abolition of property, not in the sense I think that our friend communists would want, but it is an abolition of property in the sense that
mhm.
everything's going to be fleeting access. I think
It's
about
it's what the communist elites want, but not necessarily the underground communists want.
yeah, I think about the this idea of digital media replacing physical media, because we are in a generation which could experience it. I think we were the last generation, but as you said, the next generation, the COVID generation, they won't know what a DVD is. They're going to think that video games are these things that we download on our video games and our computers, and that there was never something like a CD or DVD or Blu-ray which you could hold in hand, and that
Mhm.
is going to be an important concept later, which
I remember
is
when you loved the TV show, you had to go out and buy the DVDs if you wanted to rewatch it.
yeah, exactly, and
You
it's
know.
going to tie to a Heidegger concept of holding something in hand, which we
Mhm.
can talk about later when it comes up. But I can see it clearly with video games because we're young guys, we are very related to it,
Mhm.
and we'll see this uh, loss of wonder. You had this big boxes which came with PC game, with strategy guides, with cool
Mhm.
paintings, maps, and stuff, and being reduced to a digital image which you can't grasp, you can't find history in it, find grounding in it. It's a very quick way of getting this message that Han is trying to get across to us.
I remember games used to come with an instruction manual on how to play it,
Yeah,
and they would have character drawings in the back where you could actually observe what the characters look like. Um, Gone, just gone. The day the digital streaming. I mean, nowadays you don't have to buy the game; you can just pay monthly fees to stream the game, which is
exactly. And this is what I was talking about the abolition of property. You don't need to own the game to play the game. You can just have access to the game, which is
and that
what
access can be revoked for certain behaviors,
yeah, exactly.
which
So
is
there is a value to property which is not gained with just experiencing,
Mhm.
which is the theme of this chapter, that this move away from property owning things and just experiencing them as they come.
I like that you use video games as the example because I'm about to quote Hans here. His example was the ebook to the actual book, and this will elaborate with this is what this is Han talking about what you were elaborating upon. A book has a fate insofar as it is a saying, a possession. It carries material marks that give it a history. An ebook is not a saying, but information. It has an altogether different status of being. Even when we have it at our disposal, it is not a possession. It is something to which we have access. An ebook reduces a book to informational value. The book has no age, place, craft, or owner. It lacks the Socratic distance erratic distance from which an individual fate could speak to us. Fate has no place in the digital order. Information has neither a physiognomy nor a fate. And it does not allow for the information of intense ties. One cannot have, for instance, a personal copy of an ebook. A personal copy of a book is given its unmistakable face, its physiognomy, by the hand of the owner. Ebooks are faceless and without history. They may be read without the use of hands. There was a tactile element to the turning the pages of a book that is constitutive of every relationship. Without bodily touch, no ties can emerge. Oh, so good. Here's my note on this one. How much better is a used book with notes and highlights from the previous owner? A window into the mind of another. Reading the book your grandmother had. For example, my grandma passed a few years back, and I found she was reading very large print because her eyesight was going. She was reading a very large print collection of Father Brown mysteries from G.K. Chesterton. And I could see where she stopped reading because he would dog ear the pages. I could tell where she stopped reading, where she reread a page. It smelt like her. You had a that book itself became like a photograph, and which is a means of it's a tool for remembrance of my grandma. And people clearly still want this. I'm sure you saw it. There's a post going on Twitter the other week about this guy's idea to have a intergenerational Minecraft server in which his great grandkids could hop on and see the things he built and his kids built, and it would be a family um, heirloom passed down as a Minecraft server, which is I like the idea because it's trying to create heirlooms through a digital process of information. But it clearly shows that desire is still there. We just don't have enough respect for sayings or enough recognition of the importance of sayings and try to recreate the same processes through information and digital in the info space.
Yeah, I think this is a great example. I personally have a personal vendetta against ebooks and audiobooks because I think books are such a great uh, vehicle to develop a relationship too. You know, I have with me the books that my father used in high school and the books my grandfather used in high school. So they are objects to ground experience. Although I can't directly experience what the 20th century was, I can have a glimpse at it. I can hold it in hand in some way, and I can relate to it. I can find its place in my world. And this is the fundamental meaning of objects as grounding. They help us find our place in the world. Who does this book belong to? How do I relate to them? How can I use this book in a way that is meaningful to me? So whenever I read a book, I don't just remember the book. I remember where I read it. I remember what I was going through while I was reading it. Because, for instance, this book we are discussing right now, Known Things by Byung Chul Han, I know that I bought it in Amazon, which is not great,
Mhm.
but I carry I carry it to work. I read it over my lunch hours. I read it in the bus going home. I read it on my weekends. I read this book to discuss it with Caleb, and I know Caleb with these ideas, and I relate to work with these ideas. I relate to going home with these ideas. So the book is not just the information, which is great, but it's also, oh, now I know this author. Now I have this physical thing. Now I can talk to people about this, and reducing uh, uh, this book to just a page on my phone or just audio which I can listen while doing some idiosyncratic task is the most perverse thing that humanity has ever come up about.
See, I'm with you on the ebooks. I have a Kindle because for a window for a time, I'm like, man, these ebooks are so much cheaper, 99 cents. But I've stopped using it completely. I just the physical books are so much better. I still love the audiobooks, but I do a lot of driving, and you can't read and drive. Maybe you can. I can't. So I like the audiobook, but there's way less value in an audiobook. The audiobook is just a means to gain information. The
My
book is
yeah,
book
my
is
my
so much
issue
better.
with the audiobook is that people are going to use it to do the most profane activities possible while listening to something beautiful. And I think about this when I talk to my friends and they oh yeah, I was listening to Kant while I was working out at my gym talking to girls, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think you're going to relate to Kant, buddy.
No, certain books you just can't do like that. Nah, see, all the philosophy books you have to kind of just drive and listen to. Like I like to hop on I have an electric scooter. So I like to hop on that and then go on. Like we have a little hiking trail that's been paid for walking, and it goes from my town to the town over. I like to just hop on my scooter when it's cool in the morning or late at night, and just drive that road, listen to the audiobook. It's fun. It has a location. You kind of get the sense of the smell of the nature, but
Yeah,
like I don't know. For me personally, you give me a good history book on Alexander, I'm gonna churn out the greatest workout I've ever been a part of.
yeah. I'm not gonna be a hypocrite and say I don't condone audiobooks and ebooks because I read them. When I have the chance to listen to a good audiobook, I will do it, and I think they have their uses. I think they have their utility. For instance, ebooks are awesome when you are trying to write an essay, write a script, because you can just tab and look at the stuff. You can just copy and paste. But the experience of reading a physical book cannot in any way be translated as reading an ebook. It's a
Absolutely.
much more livid and full experience. You can imbue a lot more meaning and history to it. And I think outside of the information, which it can kind of dispense in the same way, it doesn't have that creating of meaning with which you can with physical objects.
Well, this is actually why I started. I used to be very against like highlighting my books or taking notes in the margins. completely changed my mind on that. If I love to highlight everything in my books, or even put like on the first blank page, like, okay, this green mark means this yellow mark means this, and I'll color code the highlights so that when I do die, and these books are given to my kids and my grandkids, hopefully, they can have a window into my thought processes of the book as I was reading it. In a sense,
Yeah,
it's a way to immortalize the mind for future generations.
yeah. I think Han is spot on this book about this
Mhm.
objects as grounding. It's the overall idea of the book. It's the main thread, and I can relate to it in a personal level in a lot of things because the meaning the surface meaning of an object is such a low amount compared to the whole meaning you can give to it. So he's going to talk about the instrumental view of objects. You have a cup, the cup is useful for drinking, and it ends there. And the age of non things is that the age of information as they come, things as they come, and not things as they are. So, the cup is a cup that was given to me as a gift instead of just a cup. So, the grounding of experience is the ability to create meaning out of seemingly ordinary stuff. And this is fundamentally the human experience. Because if you can't create meaning, we are disempowering humans and empowering some other thing.
Absolutely. Okay. You got anything more you want to say on that chapter of from possessing to experiencing? Or are you ready to move into smartphones?
Now we can go ahead.
Let's do smartphones here. So I don't really have any notes on these ones because there's just so much here that I took. So I don't know about you, but Hans one of those authors where you read a sentence or a paragraph or or segment, and you have to just close the book and stare out the window for a few minutes to contemplate.
Oh, okay, buddy. You don't have to read into my life here. How did you know that I did that?
I mean, he has a point later about goosebumps and how the importance of that in a phenomenological sense, and it's very fitting that of all people, Han would make that point.
Yeah.
So let's get into smartphones here. The truly beautiful cannot be touched. It demands distance. Faced with the sublime, we stand back in awe. When praying, we fold our hands. The sense of touch destroys distance. It knows no astonishment. It demystifies, deorizes, and renders profane what is touched. The touchscreen supplants the negativity of the other, of the unavailable. It generalizes the haptic compulsion to make everything available. In the age of the smartphone, even the sense of sight succumbs to haptic compulsion and loses its magic. It loses the capacity for astonishment. The distance destroying, consuming way of seeing approximates the sense of touch. It desecrates the word. In this way of seeing, the word appears only in the form of availability. For the frantically typing index finger, everything is consumable. The index finger that orders commodities or food necessarily traverses its consumerist habits to other areas. Everything it touches takes on the form of a commodity. On Tinder, it degrades the other, who becomes a sexual object, deprived of his or her otherness. The other becomes consumable. In digital communication, the other is increasingly absent. Smartphones allow us to retreat into bubbles that screen us off from the other. Digital communication rarely involves salutations. The other is not explicitly addressed. We prefer to write a text message rather than ring someone up because in writing we are less exposed to the other. Thus, the other as voice disappears. Communication with a smartphone is disembodied and without a gaze. Community has a bodily dimension. Because of its lack of corporeality, digital communication weakens community. The gaze stabilizes community. Digitalization makes the other as gaze disappear. The absence of the gaze is partly responsible for the loss of empathy in the digital age. When a parent stares at a smartphone, the infant is deprived of the gaze. The gaze of the mother, in particular, provides the infant with stability, self-affirmation, and community. The gaze builds primordial trust. Without a gaze, a disturbed relationship to the self and others develops. So good, man. There's so much
Yeah,
there.
yeah, this one hits hard.
I on this point here, let me find this real quick here. Where is it at here? Because of the lack of corporeal AI, digital communication weakens community. The gaze stabilizes community. Digitalization makes the other's gaze disappear. The absence of the gaze is partly responsible for the loss of empathy in digital age. And I know you're thinking, oh, but Caleb, we hear the left talk about empathy all the time. We'll always hear it in arguments. Just have more empathy, as if it's the only guiding moral factor. As if all of morality in Western history is boiled down to just have empathy. Empathy does. They don't know what empathy means, first of all. Second, they use it in a way that only signals their status as a high-caring individual, which that itself is actually not caring. That is selfish. You are signaling care, and you are selfishly signaling care as a means to boost your standing among other selfish people who have no care. It is asinine. It is evil, and they shouldn't use the word, and we shouldn't care if they use the word because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah, true. I think what is interesting in this passage is this idea that, he's gonna expand on it further after, but this idea that the smartphones and, overall digital technology makes everything accessible. And by making everything accessible, it desensitizes us to them. So I talked about this with you personally, but the globalization and every more virtualization of the world kind of takes the enchantment out of it, because he's going to expand this in a later chapter, but this idea that we can see anywhere in the world kind of take this idea of the exotic other out of the picture. So if, for instance, you all of your life you heard of Paris, but you never saw it, you're gonna think, wow, it must be this amazing city, this great achievement of mankind. And in earlier centuries, you could say an American man will dream of in his whole life of visiting Paris, the great European capital with its great historical buildings, landmarks, and history. But in the modern age, you can just pick up your phone, open Google Earth, and go to Paris, France, without any, sort of ritual or history
Oh,
to it.
it's even more like that now, because now they have VR Google Earth, in which you can literally pop yourself down to a street view of virtual reality of the actual location. It is. Oh,
So yeah,
it's, oh my god, it's so awful.
it it is in the way Han uses the sense of the word, and again, it's a point which is we're going to expand later. It's pornographic. It's all laid out bare without any sense of wonder.
Yeah.
So you just throw Paris without any context in your face. You're gonna think Paris is just a boring old place like any other. You're going to flatten out.
You reduce Notre Dame Cathedral to pictures on a screen, and you wonder why it's not magnificent.
Yeah,
It's
and
sickening.
you flatten out the whole human experience and its accomplishments to places you can visit virtually without any context, and this fundamentally is anti-human. It's anti-meaning. It makes us unable to relate to things in a deep manner, and we're kind of just stuck with this prison of glass, which we can only look at but never experience it.
It's, they have VR museum tour guides now.
Uh, I didn't want to know about this.
It's, the VR. I remember when I first found out about VR, like, man, this is gonna be so cool. It's gonna be like that Nerve gear from Sword Art Online. We're gonna have like really cool video games, and then you see what it's used for, and it's just like furry porn and the demystifying of everything. And it's like, yep, this sucks. This sucks so much.
And there is this idea also with the smartphone that it makes life easy instead of hard.
Oh, we got a whole segment on that one when he gets into surprisingly, listener, one of his key points of a illustration on this is Mickey Mouse cartoons.
That's true.
We will have so much fun. I brought up clips for that one. I got clips to illustrate those points because I think it's To,
Oh,
to
nice.
as an American, I know Mickey Mouse is everywhere, but as a Floridian who has went to Disney World more times than I can count, the Mickey Mouse comparisons hit home. It was it's incredible. I can't wait to get to that one, honestly. um,
Yeah.
so I got another quote here. Perceived in its own right, smartphones do not really differ in their appearance. We look through them into the infosphere. An analog watch also provides us with information regarding time, but it is not an informaton. It is a thing, even an adornment. Its material aspect is central to it. A society that is dominated by information and informatons is unadorned. Adornment originally meant splendid attire. Non-things are naked. The decorative and the ornamental are characteristic of things. They are life's way of telling us that life is about more than mere functioning. In the Baroque age, the ornamental was Stratum Dei and the cedar of the gods. If we submit life fully to functionality and information, we drive the divine out of life. The smartphone is a symbol of our time. The smartphone is not established in any way. It is dominated by the smooth and straight. Even the communication that takes place via smartphones lacks the magic of beautiful forms. It is dominated by a straightforwardness that finds its best expression in affects. The smartphone also intensifies hypercommunication. Everything is leveled out, abraded, and ultimately made to conform. We may live in a society of singularities, but paradoxically, the singular, the incomprehensible, is hardly to be found. We present our smartphones everywhere. We even delegate our perception to these apparatuses. We perceive reality through the filter of the screen. The digital window dilutes reality into the information that we register. There is no physical contact with reality. Reality is deprived of the presence. We no longer perceive the material vibrations of reality. Perception is disembodied. The smartphone derealizes the word. So good.
This is the ultimate idea that we, by being able to see, touch, and you know, exp- uh, and go anywhere, all these things lose meaning because we find meaning in a lot of ways in resistance, and especially as he's going to point out later, in silence. So as we get, all this information at once, all this information becomes meaningless, even if there is valuable information. It's the concept that he's going to say, the hell of the same, because we are exposed to so much information. It stopped losing any meaning at all. It's just noise. It's just diffused ideas arranged in a chaotic assessment, which has no through line, no narrative. So the smartphone is the process in which the whole world becomes social media feeds. It becomes quick posts, or it becomes uh, quick information which you can gather at your fingertips, and the whole world becomes desensitized to it. And I think this is a good segment to talk about McLuhan, if you will. Can I
Please,
talk about a quote?
please do.
Okay. The medium is the message. The resulting telephone in the dark corridor with receivers as heavy as dumbbells prefigures the message and lends to it something of the uncanny. The noises of the first telephone conversations were nocturnal noises. The mobile phones we carry around in our pockets today do not possess the heavy weight of fate. They are handy and light. We literally have a grip on them. Fate is that alien power that immobilizes us. A message, as the voice of fate, does not leave us much room to maneuver. The mobility of the smartphone is enough to give us a feeling of freedom. No one is terrorized by its ringing. The smartphone does not force us into a helpless passivity. No one is delivered over to the voice of another. So these objects, these mediums, they have no actuality in them. This image that he uses of the old phone as compared to the smartphone perfectly illustrate how the enchantment goes out of the world. Because when your things are clumsy, like he talks about on the analog watch and the elaborate decorations of the cathedrals, you can feel something in them. You can see intent, you can see weight, you can see uh, some kind of atmosphere. But when they are bare and accessible, the smartphone screen is flat. It doesn't have any bumps for you to cut your finger or hurt your nose or something. It's just a flat with no obstacles or things in your way. It's just easily accessible. It's hard to derive meaning out of that. It's hard to have narrative out of it.
I was actually going to say on his point about the smooths. I don't know if you read it or not, but in his book Saving Beauty, the entire first chapter is just on on smooths, on the aesthetic direction. Everything is going towards a smoothed out existence. I actually just grabbed the book. Let me read you this part here. He has on the smooths here. This is the first page of Saving Beauty. The smooth is the signature of the present time. It connects the sculptures of Jeff Koons, iPhones, and Brazilian waxing. Why do we today find that smooth is beautiful? Beyond its aesthetic effect, it reflects a general social imperative. It embodies today's society of positivity. What is smooth does not injure, nor does it offer any resistance. It's looking for a light. The smooth object deletes its against. Any form of negativity is removed.
Yeah, that there is this idea that we want and we are drawn into things with no resistance, things that we can get with ease, with no hardship. That this idea that we can earn anything with no great struggle, and this, of course, is changing our minds and changing the way we perceive reality, because when you have the figurative world in your literal fingertips, it kind of gives this uh, idea that man is in charge when he's the most powerless of all, when he can't actually relate to anything, but he can just see anything without without great differentials, without bumps or irregularities in it. It's just
The opposition.
yeah, without opposition. We are accustomed to that. We are accustomed to this idea that we can access information, we can access people without difficulty, and it's a very clear phenomenon to see in celebrity culture. This idea that we must be able to see the celebrity or the person we have a parasocial relationship all the
Well,
time
think
and
about
all the
Twitch
information
streamers.
about them.
The Twitch
Exactly.
streamers to go for 12 hours a day. I just had a point. Let me see if I can remember it. Smooth resistance technology. Oh, I lost it. I had a point I was going to make and I completely lost it. No, well, no, but yeah, that's that's going to bother me the rest of the day. I'm going to remember the point like at 9:00 tonight and text it to you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but no, I like Han's point, at least in Saving Beauty, and here on the smooth. That's one thing I like about Han is that he'll have like a few, like see here in the nonsense, he mentions a few different times about the smooth object. And in a different book, he has a whole chapter on the smooth. He is very interconnected.
Yeah.
I remember it now, on transparency, the parasocial relationships. It reminds me of his book, Transparency Society and the Agony of Eros. And what's before, like, people would link their Instagrams and their Spotify to their Tinder. Has this way to receive all the information about someone before their music taste, their hobbies, where they go, what they do. The mystery is gone, and eroticism requires mystery, and we have removed the mystery. And there's no better example than this, I say, than the T app women were using a few weeks back. Just posting pictures of guys and having women say, "Oh, I know that guy. Here's all the terrible things about him." It's like the idea that the negativity of surprise is so terrifying that you have to know everything about the other before you even meet the other. Just completely dehumanizing and de-othering the other. Kind of makes me think of his book, The Exposition of the Other. Once we try to get rid of otherness as other, um, which is another point of his interconnected works. That's the problem I was talking about. Han is like his books
Yeah,
all
I
interconnected.
realized that.
It's that's why some people, if you're gonna read Han, you gotta read Burnout Society and Agony of Eros first. Those kind of give you a good foundation to go into everything else. And then you'll read one book, you'll read his next book, and you're gonna reinterpret the last book in the presence of the new book. It's it's so good. Okay, you got anything more on smart? Any quotes? Any more quotes? Anything on smartphones? Because I'm out of sayings on smartphones.
Now we can go on.
Okay, this is a fun one. Selfies.
Oh boy.
Selfies. Okay, here's a quote from Han. An analog photo is a thing. We take great care to keep it safe, as we do with all things close to our heart. Because of its material nature, it's fragile and exposed to the processes of aging and decay. It is born and dies like a living organism. It is born on the levels of sprouting silver grains. It flourishes a moment, then ages. Attacked by light, by humidity, it fades, weakens, and vanishes. Analog photography also embodies the transistence of the referent. The photographed object inexorably recedes into the past. Photography mourns. The drama of death and resurrection rules over. Barth's theory of photography, which can be read as a pennum to analog photography, has a fragile saying: a photograph is destined to die. But at the same time, photography is a medium of resurrection. It captures the rays of light coming from the referent and perceives them on silver grain. It does not just bring back memories of the dead by letting them come alive again. It also makes possible an experience of presence. Photography is an ectoplasm, a magic emanation of past reality, a mysterious alchemy of immortality. The loved body is immortalized by the meditation of a precious metal, mediation of a precious metal, silver, monument, and luxury, to which we might add the notion that this metal, like all metals of alchemy, is alive. Photography is the umbilical cord that connects the beholder to the loved body beyond its death. It achieves the beloved's bodily resurrection and saves it from death. Thus, photography has something to do with resurrection. Here's my note. Han focuses on the photo as it was the last piece of technology that physically serves this purpose. Historically speaking, bones, gravestones, and locks of hair serve the same purpose or accomplish the same desire. Walking by this gravestone of a loved one, seeing the relics and bones of a saint, or carrying locks of hair from the beloved. Like a photograph, a lock of hair moves one to remembrance through absence. The hair becomes a tool to inspire recollection of the other. To quote my favorite part of Lord of the Rings, when Gimli asked for the hair of Lady Galadriel, treasure it, he says. When asked why, he says, treasure it, lady. My lady, he answered, in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if I ever return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in crystal as an heirloom of my house, and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days.
It is so sad to me that these things, and especially photos, are being transposed to the digital reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've talked about this about video games before, but I think Han is right that this is much sadder when we think about it in the sense of photos,
Mm-hmm.
because video games are recreational activity. We can go on without them, but the memory of our loved ones is a thing which is a very much harder to live without.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, our generation is especially sensible to these ideas because, again, we were the last ones to experience it. We were the last ones have a family album to actually hold a photograph in hand.
Literally, when I finished reading this chapter, I called not even chapter, this little segment here on photos. I called my mom and said, "Hey, I know you haven't scrapbooked in a while because he does these giant scrapbooks every year of the family from the year I was born to my sister to all the way from 98 to 23. He has family photo album
Wow.
scrapbooks. And she stopped in, I think, 2019. And I called her, like, Mom, can you, all the kids are gone. You don't have a dog is dead. You don't have a pet. Can you get back into scrapbooking, please? And I tried to negotiate way too premature. Like, I know, listen, I know you guys don't want to talk about this, but one day you're going to die. I would like these in the will. I don't want my sister having them. I want these photos because he won't care for them. So I was trying to
Yeah.
prematurely negotiate my ownership of these family heirlooms of photos. It's
I think we as Gen Z are in this unique place, which are a bit of a unique and I guess some can say unenviable place of trying to put the world back together, because we have we have transitioned. We are the generation we transition from analog and this physical technologies to the digital world, and we are coming to terms with the ideas that okay, there was some wisdom in these things of the past which are being lost now, which we have to hurry back to fix, otherwise we're going to lose a lot of things. So photos are something that I think about. I probably want to start making physical photos too, like my father did. And people are going to think, oh, that's antiquated or that's old school. But I don't think, or at least I can't hope to imagine a future where my stuff, my digital stuff survives to the next generation. Because
yeah.
personally, as I am running out of space in my digital cloud or my physical storage, I start deleting photos and oh, I this is not going to be preserved for the next generation. They're not going to remember my face. They're not going to remember the face of my mother, of my father. I guess we should go back. And it's hard to go back when you think you have accomplished this high level of technological
Mm-hmm.
development. We are so entitled to this idea that we are the pinnacle of progress, that we have to look at the past and see its wisdom and try to go back. I personally am trying to start writing a lot more using pen and pencil, and leaving physical notes,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, nobody's going to care about my social media posts when I die.
Yes, I was just thinking about that today. Um, that some of the best like biographies of historical figures are ones that include their personal letters. Like we
Yeah.
all know Napoleon's letter to Josephine. I will be home in 3 days. Do not wash. He was a freak. I can't really blame him. He was a freak, but some of the greatest men in history have been a little freaky. Um,
Yeah.
but I was thinking about in the future, like, are we gonna have like that's either A, that's gonna be lost in its entirety, or B, like biographies of Trump will include emails and DMs he sent.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad. I think that's actually definitely worse because there's less with letters. They were more expensive and harder and they took time, so you put more time into it. I don't put any thought into my text. I text someone and then go, oh, they didn't take that well. Moving on. You don't put because it's free. You don't have to think about it. But when there was a barrier a barrier of entry or a bottlenecking of the amount of communications one could send, you had to fit more and be more careful about what was said in the letter. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
going to
true.
be completely lost if we don't find some way to emulate or go back. I don't know. I've given up on going back. I think we have to find ways to emulate the past and the present. I don't think we can go back. We have to emulate in some way.
Yeah, I think one of the great ideas that Han exposes in this book is this idea that we're not going to lose things, or things are not lost because they don't exist or that we destroyed them, but because we are drowning them with so much stuff that it's going to be hard to sift through them. So, for instance, we take selfies every day, or at least people do. I personally don't take selfies every day. But which selfies are you going to show to your kids? Are you going to show them the whole 150,000? I don't think so. But how are you going to select the best ones? Are you going to go through your 150,000 and select the best ones? I don't think so either. So
No.
you're going to lose on all of your past, not because you didn't preserve it, but because it is drowned in so much noise. You can't possibly arrange it in an orderly manner because, as you said, earlier photos and letters were hard to come by, so you had to put thought into it. You had to, try to preserve it for eternity. But as we lost sight of eternity and think about the here and now, these things are done hastily and done poorly and with no forethought, and
Hmm.
that's probably why it won't be preserved.
Yeah. Real quick, we got a comment here asking the question from Maximilian. So the human consciousness exists in the first place. My response: who the hell cares? It clearly does. Like it does. So it's moot. So did it exist or not exist? It does. It's like asking, so nuclear weapons exist? It doesn't matter. They do. I yeah, that's a sorry, Max. I don't have an answer for you because it does. So why would we answer the question of whether or not it still exists in the first place? And obviously, God wanted it to, so it's good in some sense. So I don't understand. I don't get the question. So it popped up in the corner there, and I had to just quickly answer
It's
that
okay.
one. I hate questions like that. Like it's a moot. It's like, think about it. It's a moot. It's a moot point.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Okay. So here, let's get. I got two more quotes on the selfies, and then we move into artificial intelligence and the villainy of things. We've gone for how long have we been going for? Oh, an hour and a half. This is great. Oh, we had one viewer. I insulted Max and he left. Okay. Well, Max is gone.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Max. I don't care. No, that's a dumb fucking question, Max. I don't care. Um. Okay, here we go. And I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, so I'm gonna do my best on it. He's an Italian philosopher. Um.
Okay.
So let me try this. This is a quote from Han here. Agamben thus also links photography to the idea of resurrection, calling photography a prophecy of the glorious body. The subject of the photograph emits a mute address, a demand for redemption. This is Agamben. The subject shown in the photo demands something of us. Even if the person photographed is completely forgotten today, even if his or her name has been erased forever from the human memory, or indeed, precisely because of this, that person, that face demand their name. They demand not to be forgotten. Back to Han, the angel of photography continually renews the promise of resurrection. It is the angel of resurrection and redemption. It lifts us above the frailty of life. Here's my little note. Han and Agamben here pick up on the truth of the beautiful. The most beautiful things impart a command upon us. The urge of the lover, the urge of the lover fears to tell others about how much he loves his beloved. The hiker telling others of a scenic view he wishes others to see. From the beauty of God, the Christian story driving us to evangelize, to the art mirror posted on Instagram for others to see. It is in that last form that command is most corrupted because it is said not just to share the beauty, but to take credit as its sharer. I love this point here, the demand of photographs. You know, it's an interesting point to think about.
Yeah, I think his symbolism of death and resurrection uh, in photograph is very interesting because personally, the many times I I interact with physical photographs in real life is to remember past ones.
Mm.
I don't have because we've kind of quote unquote lost the technology, but I don't really find a lot of photos of living people. It usually is of old people, and it is in some way a way to perpetuate their memory. And of
Mm.
course, we know that the past, the people in the past are continuated by those who came after, and I think there's something to this idea that your memory could be lost. You could be lost to history if people don't keep telling your name. That we you have to come to grasp with.
That
I want to circle back a little bit to my previous point because I came to mind to a discussion which we are coming to terms recently, that the old internet, that internet of the personal blog spaces, of the personal website, is dying, and we are not going to have it in memory because the websites are going off. So this is part of our history, which the sites which were not archived, or we have written some article about it, are just gone from
Mhm.
memory. And and I think with the continual digitalization of reality, and how faster things are going through their cycles, a lot of our a lot of the things we are putting out to the world are not going to be remembered.
Mhm.
So I don't know if YouTube is going to last the ages, so to speak, or if every channel on YouTube is going to last the ages. And I think, wait, what about the videos I made when I was 20? What happened to them? They were like the defining things I at least felt pleasure in doing during my adult life, but now they're gone because I trusted a company. So I personally download all the videos that I find interesting and worth saving, and my own videos also, and I have them on my hard drive. And I personally am planning to put them on CD too, or at least a
I was
compilation of
about to
them.
say, now I have the urge to, when I do eventually decide to stop podcasting, download every episode, delete the channel, and then resell the episodes as DVDs and box sets. The Servile Age box set.
Dude,
So to the
I,
CD.
I'm not joking when I say this stuff, because I actually plan to do it, and I'm
That'd be
probably going
awesome.
to do it
That would be awesome, actually.
because
Buy it.
I don't trust YouTube to last the ages.
Mm-hmm.
But
It
I
won't.
think we could fall back much more easily to DVD, or to media sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think cloud storage is a scam,
Yes.
basically.
Yes. I am more and more convinced cloud storage, and I was thinking about this the other day. It's like there has to there it is, I don't know what it is, but it has to be some cap on data that can be stored. I'm sure it's a lot higher than it will get to be a lot higher than it is today, but there can't be an infinite data storage.
There's a big rabbit hole to go into this stuff. I know there was some news a little back while talking about how Google was running out of storage space, and that just got started me thinking, what if Google actually ran out of storage? Like all the stuff going into Google, or some of the old stuff, is going to get deleted to make
Mhm.
way for the information flow.
And
So
in a sense, because Google currently is the biggest preserver of history, in a sense, and they start deleting it. They are deleting history,
exactly. And
which
and
is
that fundamentally is uncomfortable to me, because not only my stuff can get deleted, which it's not meaningful to a lot of other people, but I think it will be meaningful to my posteriority, and to the
Mhm.
people which find myself meaningful. But if we also think about, as you said, the things Google are preserving, we're probably gonna lose that, and that is looking more and more like a very good possibility, that all this great stuff that was produced is going to get lost. So that's why I personally download every video that I like, and I recommend everyone to do the same. I know YouTube probably has some policy about downloading videos, but if you actually love the video you're watching, you can just download the stuff you like.
Yeah.
And we have to, in a sense, reclaim property. And this is one of the
Mm.
things Han talks about in this book, is that we are getting rid of property in the name of access, but soon we will probably lose access to both. We will have neither property nor access, because the things we had access in a moment is not going to be the things we have access in the second moment. And you can see this clearly if you think about subscriptions, because the catalog in the subscription services are recurring. So in one month a movie is in another month it's out, you can't watch it because you don't own it.
We got a message here from Perkio. What up, Perkio? Part of the fun of looking into family history is not knowing a lot about them. The ancestors almost become legendary figures to you. This would be lost because of platforms like Facebook. And exactly. And it would be lost not because it doesn't um, hold the information, but because it will hold so much information, it
Yeah.
becomes like, God, I can't. I'm just thinking like the shit I've said on Facebook. If my great grandkids try to understand it, like I use Facebook to troll family members. You know what I post on Facebook, Gutsavo? I post haikus about Nick Land. I post Nick Land acceleration as haikus just because I know my aunt will call my mom and ask her to explain it. And
Bro.
it's
That is kind of
just a quote.
awesome, actually.
It is. It's fun. It's a lot of fun because you imagine 3 generations later on some high-tech VR tablet nonsense trying to understand a haiku that was written just to troll an ant. the narrative is completely absent in the post.
Yeah.
Whew.
And I think one of the things the Perkyo talked about here is this idea of when you lay it out bare, you lose access to all that enchantment. As you said, that's the loss of arrows, you know. That's
Mhm.
just pornography, having everything open to you. So when everything is open about figures of the past, they start to lose this mystical aura, and people are going to say, oh, okay, we want to demystify the path, we want to be objective about the past, but then you're losing narration, you're losing the connecting threads that tell a story. You're just being demoted.
It just becomes information that you didn't have to narrativize,
Yeah,
and that
it's,
will
it's
always be biased.
it just becomes a chaotic thread. It's
Mhm.
not a thread at all. It just becomes chaotic points of a person's life with no meaning, and without meaning, there is basically no point in them. So the whole world becomes pointless, and we are back to nihilism.
Oh. Again, listeners, go read Han. Because we maybe have covered, I think we've covered like 9 or 10 quotes from Han. This book has like, how many pages is this book? This book is about 100, it's only 100 pages. And we've gone for almost 2 hours, and we still have like probably another hour to go. I recommend
Yeah,
everybody go read Han. Find either read Burnout Society and then find a topic you're interested in that Han is written about, and just read that one. If it's on beauty, I recommend everyone here. The Scent of Time, I think, is his best book. I think Agony Earth is really good as the introduction, but Scent of Time, that is, it's his most Catholic book because the answer is obviously a liturgical calendar. It's holy days. That is the answer to the crisis of the Scent of Time. That's one we got to cover sooner or later. Scent of Time. That's a great one. Okay, next quote. I got one here on Snapchat. You ready?
this one's great.
Mm-hmm. Snapchat represents the culmination of instantaneous digital communication. It embodies the time of the digital in its purest form. The moment is all that counts. A Snapchat story is not a story in the proper sense. It is not narrative, but additive. Right there. That line right there, everyone listening?
Yeah, yeah,
It is
yeah, yeah.
narrative and additive. That is a. Think about that. Think about that in relation to any form of information you gain about a story and recognize the difference between narrative and this additive. That's it's incredible. Anyway, no more than a list of snapshots. Digital time disintegrates into a mere sequence of point-like presences. It has no narrative continuity. It thus transforms life itself into something fleeting. Digital objects do not permit any lingering in this way. They differ from things. Selfies are characterized by playfulness. The digital communication generally has something playful about it. Communication becomes a playground for Phono sapiens. Phono sapiens is more Homo Luddites than Homo faber. I don't know that one. Visible communication through digital photography is far better suited to playing and acting than it is written communication. His selfies are primarily messages. They have a tendency to be over-expressive. Extreme postures are common. There are no mute selfies. Analog portraits, by contrast, are usually quiet. They do not demand one's attention. This quietness is precisely what gives them their expressive force. Selfies are loud but poor in genuine expression. Because of this exaggerated posture, affected the subjects look like masks. The fact that visual digital communication has taken hold of the human face is not without consequences. The face has taken on the form of a commodity. As Benjamin would say, the face has irreparably lost its aura. Several points here. One, you need to be aura farming, people. Okay, lost in the TikToks, aura farming.
True.
Two, Han on the absence of narrative continuity in Snapchat communication. What I am hesitant to say is communication, as there is no communion through snapshots, can be further studied in his work, The Crisis of Narration in the Sense of Time. Again, go read the books. Again, this observation about the playfulness of digital communication lending to overexpression reminds me of a fascinating critique on the subversive nature of cartoons. Man develops through a reciprocal exchange with his environment, ways of talking, actions, and facial expressions. In some ways, what is better on the face is more important than the words we hear. The easiest way to determine if one can trust the words they hear is to look at the speaker's face, the subtle curve of a lip, the slight eyebrow raise. These cues inform us as much, if not more, than the words we hear. Today, there are those among us that have consumed so much animated content that their communication is not with flesh and blood, but pixels and polygons. Their hyper-expressive faces does not tell us more, but rather, paradoxically, it tells us less. Earnestly is displayed so strongly, one can't help but doubt its honesty. And as an example, let me share my screen real quick. Go on. That's the camera. What is it at? Every few weeks, I swear to God, every few weeks, StreamYard updates and everything gets reorganized. Okay. No sound. Just watch this person's movements.
Okay.
The exaggerated hand gestures, the eyes, the head grab, all of it. It is more cartoonist than human.
You know what gives more information about this than the actual video itself?
What?
Is the vertical bars. You know this is a TikTok. You know exactly what you're getting into.
Yes. It's and shout out to Unicorn Friend. He is the one who had this observation. I think I won't quote him. I think Disney, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon must be destroyed. This is not a person. This is a cartoon, and they are responsible for it. Which he later said, we as primitives, yes, with souls, but God's souls are primate form rather than reptiles or squids, have an unspoken language of gestures and facial expressions that are deeper and stronger than our actual spoken languages. What does it mean when cartoons subvert that communication?
Yeah. I think this whole discussion is great. You know, this quote which you got from Han is actually in a subtle way a reference to McLuhan, because when he says Snapchat represents the culmination of instantaneous digital communication, he's referencing the McLuhan when he talks about instant electronic communication, which was the culmination in television. So we are moving forward in a way of communicating things without depth, but with great speeds. And the whole theory of which McLuhan poses is that the medium shapes us more than we shape them. So as you know, we are exposed to these cartoons, as you said, they start to shape us, and when we start believing that these facial expressions are what people do, and we lose touch with so-called reality. We gain touch with or non-touch with this hyper reality of cartoon characters, which teach us how to express ourselves.
So I have several things I want to say here. One, on the previous point about photos representing a means of immortality because you can be forgotten. We just talking about cartoons. It reminded me. You know what a movie illustrates this perfectly? Disney's Coco. I don't know if anyone has seen it, But Disney's Coco, it's a movie about the Mexican Day of the Dead, and this guy finds a family photograph and only has half the photo. The other half has been torn out, and you only see one side of the family. You don't see the dad, and he ends up going to the land of the dead, and he finds this, poor ghost guy in there. He's a skeleton, and you find out that that guy was his ancestor, the guy on the other side of the photo. And in Coco, how it works is if you are completely forgotten by your loved one, that is when you truly die. You have your first life, and you have the second life in the land of the dead that ends when you are completely forgotten. And so he saves the guy from being completely forgotten by finding the other half of the photograph and putting them together so the whole family can remember him in his entirety. In a sense, the photograph is what saves him from the true deaths. So
awesome.
as a whole, yeah. So again, there's a lot to be said about the dangers of cartoons, but also Pixar gets a pass from me because how good is Wall-E and Coco and all the other Pixar films, But it's definitely something in the danger of. Yeah. So anyway, back to the Snapchat thing now about the digital the instantaneous communication, the Snapchat. This to me, Snapchat represents the exact opposite end of the photograph because it is photos that convey things, but they are designed to be deleted. They don't last. They are designed for literally to be a snapshot that doesn't persist. There's no staying power to a Snapchat message or a Snapchat picture. So in a sense, it's probably, I would argue Snapchat is one of the main ways a lot of people communicate. I mean, have you seen people? They will text through Snapchat, but they will send selfies and then the type of message attached to the photo. So and they think it's more expressive because it's the words and the photo. But of course, both are so lacking communion and hyper expressive as a photo that there's actually less communication being done, and there's no staying power. It's all immediately gone, poof, doesn't exist anymore. It's what's that quote from? Wolf of Wall Street. It's a fugazi, it's fairy dust. It's gone.
There is something to this whole algorithm brain thing, where you try to make stuff that is as bombastic and as expressive as possible. So you have that. We all know this phenomena where people are going to like put a red arrow, red circle, screaming face on the thumbnail because this is what get quick's attention. But we know these images lack depth. They just are bombardments of information and stimuli which mean nothing, but which are made to activate our reptilian brain, not in the parts that are meaningful to us, but just in those specific parts that can manipulate our receptive neurons or something to elicit a reaction, but not so much thought. So we are kind of, when we are delving into these environments, and mainly TikTok I'm thinking about, we are just relegated to the most cheap realm of stimuli and lack of depth in the experiencing of things and of people. So we end up projecting people as just these shallow things, as just another face in the crowd,
And on Han's point about the over exaggeration, we all know the kind of like autistic person who got way too into anime and then began to act and behave or talk as if life was an anime.
Yeah.
I really wonder, how do I put this? If the the video we saw of that ginger hair lady, freaking out and very cartoon. She was very much a Western cartoon. She was expressing. Her mode of expression was very much Western cartoon. You could sing Steven Universe. You could sing Adventure Time. You could sing Amazing World of Gumball. I won't include Regular Show because that might have been the last good cartoon. But I wonder, you could see it how differently someone who is obsessed with anime communicates.
Yeah.
And so I wonder what how do I put this? Okay, here's how I put this. in the previous years, previous days, we had accents that would differentiate where someone is from.
All
Where in the
right.
future we could have means of expressing yourself that are so over exaggerated it signals what fandom or digital community say to you.
We kind of already have this, you know. We can easily point out when someone has algorithm brain or not, because they can't focus on one activity. They watch videos in 2x
The
speed
brain,
or 4x
yeah,
speed.
the brain
And
rotted.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's kind of developing like as an emergent phenomenon, not as a positive one, but
no, not at all. It's terrible. We're losing accent and gaining hyper expressive
brain rot.
animated nonsense. It's I'm very. I wish I had a time machine to go like 200 years into the future just to see how this all pans out. You know,
I would
I,
be scared.
it would be scary. Listen, Time Machine used to excite me until I watched Time Machine, the movie. I don't know anything about the book. I'm not a big. It was H.G. Wells, so I'm not a big fan, obviously.
Oh
But the
yeah,
movie Time Machine is actually really good.
I haven't
Um,
watched it.
well, it's mainly because Jeremy Irons plays in it, and Jeremy Irons is, incredible. Um, are you ready to move on to artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the one where I have no notes taken because it's just I couldn't. There were so many things to think about that I couldn't figure out a single thing to write down. So it's a bit of a longer one here, so I'm just gonna go for it. Artificial intelligence. On a deep level, thinking is decidedly an analog process. Before capturing the word and concepts, thinking is emotionally gripped, even affected by the word. The affective is essential to human thinking. The first thought emits is goosebumps. Artificial intelligence is incapable of thinking for the very reason that it cannot get goosebumps. It lacks the affective analog dimension, the capacity to be emotionally affected, which lies beyond the reach of data and information. It's a great little summary of ways to argue against people who say AI is sentient.
Yeah, the main thing about AI is that it is good at presentation, you could say. It is good at convincing you that it's not a calculator, because
Yeah.
it is just a fancy calculator. It is, as Han is going to elaborate, nothing more than a calculating algorithm to strip down language
Mhm.
to its most basic information conveying components without its rich tapestry, the richness of languages, of poems. Is just a way of calculating which word comes after the other in a very accelerated and very
Yeah.
hyper related way. But it is no more than a calculator can be a calculator. The main difference being the way AI is presented, the way it relates to us. It seems like it's this great thing, it's this great disembodied conscience,
Mhm.
but it is not. It's just a calculator with very good presentation. But
Mhm.
the way it relates to us is, I guess, much more important to us, which instead of what it actually is. And probably that's where the big scare comes from, because we are inclined to relate to things not by the way they are, but by the way they relate to us. So if this AI is talking in human language and talking about human concepts, I'm going to relate it to the
Mhm.
same person which does the same thing. I'm not going to address it like a calculator, because it's not talking to me like a calculator. I can press the buttons in it.
Mhm. Now, I've always explained AI because people really don't know. They think they hear artificial intelligence and they think like, oh, the computer from Star Trek. What even that wasn't an AI. Or they think, oh, data from Star Trek. It has some like internal quantum processing thing that we don't fully understand. It's like, no, it's a large language model. And I sense, the thought experiment about like the monkey was a typewriter. If you give it
Yeah,
an infinite amount of time, it will eventually churn out a perfect copy of Hamlet because of how infinities work.
yeah.
I think of large language models like that. They're just highly directed monkeys with typewriters, and that you give it inputs and it would then match your input with a similar sounding output. And it's just designed to trick you into thinking it's a person.
It is that monkey if his brain was linked to the whole canon of human history up to that point.
Mm-hmm. And there is something very subversive and evil in the way AI will private communion through artificial means, and the way people have been tricked. First of all, I don't even like using the term AI because it's not intelligent. I prefer VI because of virtual intelligence, because it is a simulacrum of intelligence in a sense. Like it is an attempt to simulate intelligence. So it's a virtual intelligence, not an artificial intelligence. It's not like it's a guess for Mass Effect. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Second, the way people get convinced. I saw a guy on Twitter fervently arguing that AI had to be sentient because, and I quote, it brought him to completion every night this week.
Oh.
He is forming a psychosexual relation to an AI and using that as an argument for its legitimacy as an artificial sentient life form.
Yeah, I think one of the great dangers of AI, as I said, is the way it presents itself.
Mhm.
Because if the AI was much more analogical, like, a watch, a calculator, you could excuse it as being a robot thing.
Mhm.
But because it is so mysterious, so on the cloud, you only see its words, you don't see its body. It presents itself as a magical thing.
Mhm.
But if to use AI, you had to go, to your local town center, and there was this huge apparatus with cables and databases. Okay, it's just a compiling of
Understood.
this data set. But as we are accessing it in kind of like this mysterious, almost superstitious way, where we're like casting spells on our room, on our dark room, yeah, it's going to give off some signals.
And then it responds to us in the same way we respond to most people today in
Yeah.
texting. That trick is too easy. Pixar really depicted humans in the early days. Wally's facial expressions are a lot more subtle because he's a robot. This might have the opposite effect. Yeah, I would say that the Pixar gets a pass because they actually tell human stories. Why I don't think movies have that same level of influence and a reciprocal process of like the engagement with polygons and outlines compared to Flesh and Blood as a TV show does, because it's a weekly sync. You're going back every week to see you see your same characters, your same friends, next week. You see Benson and Rigby in a different scenario next week on next week's episode, And so that trick of the same characters popping up over and over again, in a sense, becomes a simulacrum of friendship. And in that sense, that begins to form the reciprocal exchange between the individual and the polygons.
Yeah.
Which is why I think animated movies get a pass. Which is why I think anime movies are so much better than any anime TV show, barring Neon Genesis Evangelion. That is the only one that gets a pass on that as well, because that's my favorite anime personally. I think that's the best anime. But there's so much to think about in terms of AI, and again, that's what Han is great for. I don't think there's an author today who is better for assisting one in contemplation than reading Han. You read a page and you can contemplate that for like an hour or more sometimes. I'm still contemplating things I got from Agony of Eros. And I read that like a year ago.
And I think that's purposeful, because I think he's highly conscious of what he is writing and what he actually believes in his themes, and his idea of silence, of contemplation, probably goes into how he writes his books. Because if you look at non-things holistically, you see that he repeats a lot of stuff. But if you read each paragraph is a complete meal. So although he repeats a lot of stuff, he repeats it in order that you can digest a piece fully, because then you can elaborate on it. Then you can fill the silence with your own meaning.
Absolutely. Okay. So I was getting the book together for the next part. Are you finished with AI? Because I got nothing more to say on AI.
Yeah, I think some closing thoughts on AI to to try to pass on the general idea that Han was getting about it is that it it fundamentally doesn't think the same way as us, because as we said, it is it is somewhat just a very complex, very highly distributed, and and has access to a lot of data, but it's a calculator. And we humans don't think as calculators,
Mhm.
because calculators think in 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 a way. If you think about an electronic calculator, they think in binary, they think in machine language,
Mhm.
while we humans, we think in human language, which is much more relational with the whole world than just ones and zeros.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
when we are thinking as human, we take into account a lot more than just ones and zeros and yeses and or nos. That's not to say that all truth is relative and the eye of the beholder or anything like that, but just that the way we talk, the way we use language, is to try to convey things that are not conveyable by calculation. And
Yes.
AI can't think because it can't be in the world. It can only be in the infosphere where only data exists, but there is no ground of being. But
Mhm.
we humans are grounded in being, and by that we can relate to the past, the other, the time. We can relate to the world of being in the world, the Dasein, and that's what he brings in the text. That's Heidegger's idea of how how thinking operates, and how that's fundamentally different from AI.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a quick intermission because I have to pee. I have to drink a whole bottle of wine, so I got to run up to the
Okay.
rest real quick. Um, Either be silent, or you can vamp, or you can interact with commenters. If you want to say anything else, so you can rip off of.
I
Go
think
right
I'm going
ahead.
to go back on the chapters we have talked about so far,
Okay,
some
yeah.
things we missed.
Just do that real quick. I'll be right back. I'm gonna.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about lingering, and a quote of Byung Chul Han. It goes like this: lingering is another time consuming practice. Perception that latches onto information does not have a lasting and slow gaze. Information makes us short sighted and short of breath. It is not possible to linger on information. Lingering on things in contemplation, intentionless seeing, which would be a formula for happiness, gives way for the hunt of information. Today, we pursue information without getting knowledge. We take notice of everything without gaining any insight. We travel across the world without having experience. We communicate incessantly without participating in a community. We collect vast quantities of data without following up on our recollections. We
Mm,
accumulate friends and followers without meeting an other. In the same way, in this way, information develops a form of life that has no stability or duration. So, this is what I was talking about when I was mentioning objects as grounds for experience, because information as it comes uh, doesn't give access to the essence of a thing. Information is in some way the surface level of the thing in question, which to know you would have to have a much more direct and complex relation to it. So when we think about our the information we received, for instance, in social media, we have a lot of information, we have a lot of data, a lot of input, but we don't necessarily gain a lot of knowledge from it. I mean, I think few of us do gain actually anything from it. It is instead just a slop that keeps on feeding and feeding, but which never gives ground to any actual realization or advancement of our capabilities. Uh,
Absolutely, so true.
so
um,
true.
two things I want to add on that. But one, the quote from Han is so two things on the quote. One, if you can read a Byung Chul Han book and not feel a little called out, you are a perfect man or a saint.
Yeah,
You should. I've yet to read something from Han that did not make me go, I have to adjust something in my life now. And in a sense, it's the same thing I have when I read Photo Scene. You know, there's um a more realization is presented to you that you have to then adjust your life in accordance with.
yeah,
Um, and he doesn't really feel like if you describe the author, you don't feel like that would be the case, but it is the case because he's speaking truths. He is speaking to the truths of the systems at play. Second, on lingering, that is one thing that I personally learned to experience on my drive to Alaska. Is I would see a beautiful scenic view from on my drive or something. I'd pull over and stop, and you just stand there in silence and you linger on the moment, trying to take in every detail, and you begin to think about who else was on this road. You know, if at least me being in America, I often wonder, what if any native tribes lived here? You know, what would a frontier been like when they came across this area? Am I standing where someone else stood before? You know, you begin to think of the history of the place you're in, and that can only occur when you are lingering. That is not that is a act of contemplation. And on your point about how sayings provide the lifeblood of memory and of knowledge, it reminded me of where Aristotle begins in metaphysics. Is that knowledge begins with the senses, and that we have to sense the things around us. Um, that if you don't have any senses, you can't really. I mean, if someone is deaf, blind, has no fingers, they can't feel, they can't touch, they can't see, they can't smell. Can they think? What are they thinking about? They have no knowledge of the outside world.
yeah.
You know, they can't think. Thinking requires a an other. Thinking is reactive to stimuli. It is not I think therefore I am. Because if you were just a brain, you would not be thinking about anything.
That's a point about how AI doesn't think also
Mm-hmm.
because it can't experience the real world, and in that sense it can't place itself in the world. It has no senses, and therefore it is positionless and timeless, but not in the sense that it is eternal, but that it has no time. It doesn't have a positive time, it only has a negative time.
Mm-hmm.
Another point that I wanted to bring about this quote is that we often are bombarded with information, or worse, we actually seek this useless information to distract us, but we gain nothing from it. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to give a personal example, or at least call me out a little bit, because when I want to waste time for whatever reason, I go to watch this long video essays about a subject which I have no interest in, and I waste like 2 hours of my life watching a video about a niche subject, which again I have no interest in, and I gain nothing from it. I don't learn anything. I don't take this message in any way, but I still watch it and I continue to come back. For instance, the channel I do this most is summoning salt and throwing no shade at the guy, but uh, he does videos about speedrunning history, and I'm not interested in speedrunning. I'm not trying to speedrun these games. I don't even remember what was said in most of them, but I still watch them. I still come back. So I think this is a kind of shared experience of the digital world where we are exposed to so many things, but we don't get anything out of it. We
I was
don't
just
get,
thinking about that
yeah,
in regards to popular TV shows and streaming. People will watch all of Breaking Bad just so they can make sure they said they can watch Breaking Bad. So if it comes up in conversation, they can say they've watched Breaking Bad. They have no memory of the plot. They have just consumed it for the sake of consuming it so they can say they've seen it.
yeah.
There's nothing gained out of it.
And we
Um,
seek it, we go after it.
like we stay up late binge watching Breaking Bad, and then 2 months later, it's asked, "So, you got a favorite scene?" I like the ending. It's like you don't. There's no. This is one of Han's points, and he sees a sense of time with Vita Contemplativa, um, about the importance of boredom, and that was so much of this digital infosphere, the digital world we live in, or as I call it, the Tanos call it the Servile Age. Um, we are so there's so much entertainment, so much content to be consumed. I mean, have you noticed this? Streaming services will give you a notification about a show you might like.
I mean, I don't have streaming services notifications, but I have YouTube, and YouTube does this.
Yes, it's insane. It is and so many people are just terrified of boredom. Like I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but I've heard several people say, "Oh, I don't like being alone with my thoughts. It gets scary or dark." It's like, are you so weak you can't encounter your own mind? What the fuck did you just say to me? You're scared to be alone with your thoughts? People will play music when the moment they wake up on their Alexa devices, and they'll go to work and leave it running so that their return is accompanied with fanfare. There is never a moment of silence. And Han, boredom is the beginning of all philosophical thinking. Begins with boredom, is when the mind begins to wonder. And I sum it up this way: boredom is to the mind what sleep is to the body. It is the rest that is needed to accomplish the ends.
You know what it is? I think boredom enters that realm of uh, resistance,
Mm,
because it is much easier to drown your head, your thoughts in noise, so that you don't have to deal with them. Because
mm,
fundamentally, thinking is about negatives, is about discarding which ideas are correct or not. He does talk about this in his chapter about silence, which it's probably my favorite one of the book. When which probably means I should read Vita Contemplativa, but
that's a great one too. Man. That's another good one.
his idea is that thought and silence is this exclusion. It's dialectics, it's Plato. When you're thinking, you're discarding hypotheses, you're
Mhm.
discarding ideas, but instead you're just, when you are scrolling TikTok or Twitter or anything, you're just feeding more stuff to your mind so that you can't exclude, you're just adding. And as you're adding, you're drowning meaning, you're just getting more chaotic thoughts. And that's why I see an increasing number of people saying they have brain fog. They can't think, everything's just a noise in their head because they haven't resolved the conflict. it's
If
it's
Sting,
another thing on the crisis of narration. You haven't resolved the conflict. It just goes on and on and on and on.
yes, yes, so true, absolutely true. We I just had a point to make. It was on sinking. Okay, here it is. We all know that if you want your muscles to work, or you have to use them, right? Your muscles can atrophy.
Yeah.
I fully believe your brain can atrophy, and that we
Yeah.
have the people's
Yeah.
brain fog is just it's your mental faculties are atrophying for lack of use because
It's literally
you've
brain
off.
rot.
It is exact brain rot is such a perfect term in so many different ways. It will rot your brain. And listen, our parents all said it. You put
Yep.
junk in, you get junk out.
Yep.
Okay.
They were right.
They were so right. The wisdom of the elders speaks
And,
truth again.
and you know what scares me?
Well,
It's that our parents were right about, computers and cell phones rotting our brains.
mhm.
But what I see nowadays is that young people are much more conscious of it, and more old people are getting much more screen addicted than
They're
us.
one-shotted. They've been absolutely one-shotted by
They
modern
got one
technology.
shotted.
I mean, I don't know how many times my mom has showed me a video and I had to go, Mom, that's AI. My grandpa was the other day was like, Caleb, why can't you find a girlfriend? There's so many beautiful women online. And he shows me his Facebook feed. I'm like, that's all AI people, Pop. Pop, every one of those people aren't real. The AI goes, you mean like robots? I'm like, no, the pictures made by AIs run by Indians. Like you're not actually looking at a person, Pop.
And that's a developing story, but there is something that we are coming to terms again as a society, as a people, is that we as Gen Z, we got hit the hardest first,
Mhm.
but we seem to, it seems to me at least, that we are being the first to exit it. I think the Gen Z is the most technophobic of generations. I think the younger ones are going to be more tech savvy than us, and the earlier ones are getting more into technology than us. I think if there is a neo Luddite generation, it's going to be us, because
Yeah.
we have managed to we were pushed in, and we are now getting out through our own will and volition and struggle.
I mean, Gen Alpha is so completely fucked. That is the iPad generation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and there's no and this is another point. There's I don't know a single parent who actively monitors their kid's YouTube feed, and I am convinced some of those videos that like the unboxing videos put on by like Malaysian kids that these kids become obsessed with because they're just cartoons with faces they can kind of recognize. That is not a community in which a fully formed individual will be created in a positive way.
Yeah, it
It's
hurts so
just it's
much, man.
gonna be destructive as hell.
Yesterday, I was in a birthday party, and it didn't have that a lot of kids, because people have less and less kids these days.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, you had like 3 kids per adults, and now you have like 2 adults per kid. And the kids in the party, they were all on their cell phones, and they were right next to each other.
Oh, there was no playing, there was no making fun, no
Exactly.
roasting. They just sat there silently in the infosphere.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
it's
I'm like,
painful.
this next generation is pu- getting being pushed into this world much earlier than I was. I mean, for my generation, I was pushed into the internet very early. I got into the internet at like 10. And bear in mind, during my where I live, the technological progress is a bit lagged compared to the rest of the world. So getting into the internet in like the 2010s was like pioneer ground.
Mhm.
And but now these kids, as soon as they are like out of toddler status where they can push buttons, they are immediately thrown into a smartphones, so that their own parents can go into their smartphones.
And there
And
are
it's
toy smartphones. There are toys that are in the shape of smartphones with fake apps that you hit, and then the phone will speak to the kid saying what the app does. They,
uh, pull
they
up
are
a picture of Ted Kaczynski right now.
yes. We're about to get into some app stuff with the villainy of objects and the Mickey Mouse comparisons.
Yeah.
Um, this again, listeners. I've said it before. I'm going to keep saying it. Just read them. Listen to this, and then go pick up Burnout Society and Non-Objects. Just subscribe to the channel because I'm going to have a lot more Byung Chul Han content coming out. And read Han. Watch his documentary on Burnout. Read Burnout. Pick up his books. They're not that big. The biggest one's probably only 120 pages, and they're like $15 a pop. That's not that bad. Just buy them, read them, appreciate them.
Handbooks are surprisingly cheap.
Yeah. And also, I will say, beautiful on the shelf. Like they're
Yeah.
all the same size. They have a similar style. They can be perfectly together. They look like a complete set almost. And I think that's a conscious decision by Han.
Probably.
The aesthetic, the completion of the books. The books. Okay, you ready to move into the villainy of objects? The villainy
Yeah.
of things. Okay, listen, this would be our longest quote. I'm basically gonna have to just read
Let's
two
go
whole
to the
pages here.
abyss.
I'm gonna have to read this 2 whole pages here for the listener. So just bear with us. So after all this, so I want to point out this chapter opens up with, I believe it's French. Yeah, it's French followed by a translation of something I didn't fully understand. So the view of things, and it's a French quote, and he translates it. What an astounding submissiveness. The things are tame like pizzas, literally like pizzas. They no longer worry people at all, and thus they are no longer noticed by them, not even out of the corner of their eye. Followed by another French quote, and then translated. Beforehand, the thing is the other, the entirely other, which dictates or which writes the law, an infinitely insatiable, imperious injunction to which I ought to subject myself. Okay. The villainy of sayings. So we go from the super French breakdown to in the Mickey Mouse cartoons. Representation of material reality changes over time. In the earlier episodes, things behave treacherously. They take on a life of their own, even a waywardness. They are unpredictable actors. The hero is constantly grappling with them. He is literally thrown about by them. Dasein being thrown, Heidegger, important connection. And they all take pleasure in tormenting him. It is not at all safe for him to be near them. Doors, chairs, folding beds, or vehicles can at any time turn into dangerous objects and traps. Mechanical things are diabolical. There are constant crashes. The hero is exposed to the vagaries of sayings. They are a permanent source of frustration. The cartoons are entertaining to a large extent because of the villainy of sayings. In his early films, Charlie Chaplin is so hopelessly at the mercy of the villainy of sayings. They fly around him. They block his way. His battles with sayings create the film's slapstick humor. Torn out of their functional context, the sayings lead lives of their own. The film presents an anarchy of sayings. In the pawn shop, for instance, Chaplin, the pawn shop owner, examines an alarm clock with a stethoscope and a hammer, as if it were a body, and opens it with a manual drill and a can opener. The mechanical parts of the disassembled alarm clock then begin to move around as if they were alive. The villainy of sayings is now probably a thing of the past. We are no longer maltreated by sayings. They are not destructive. They do not offer any resistance. The sting has been taken out of them. We do not perceive them in their otherness or as alien. This weakens all feeling for reality. In particular, digitalization intensifies and the derealization of the word because it de-rarefies it. Derrida's remark about the saying as the entirely other has dictating a law to us which we need to subject ourselves is now sounds strange. Things are submissive. They are submitted to our needs. Today, even Mickey Mouse leads a digital, smart, immaterial life. His word is digitized and informatized. In the new series, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, the representation of material reality is markedly different from that in earlier episodes. Things no longer have an independent life. They are obedient tools for solving problems. Life itself is not seen as problem solving. The handling of things no longer involves conflict. Things no longer appear as unruly actors. For example, when Mickey and his friends end up in a trap, they need only shout, "Oh, Toodles," and a handy-dandy machine appears. The screen of the machine then looks like a round smartphone. Displays a menu of 4 mousecateurs. That is 4 objects from which they choose in order to solve the problem. The handy-dandy machine has a ready solution for every problem. The hero no longer collides with the physical reality. He doesn't have to deal with the resistance of things. In this way, children are fed the idea that there is nothing that cannot be done, that there is a quick solution, an app for everything, that life itself is nothing but a series of problems to be solved. I will now share a scene of Toodles from Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Oh, everybody say, "Oh, Toodles! Oh, Toodles!"
And that is what kids are being taught. That any problem can be solved with the touch of an app.
You know, I was raised with Tom and Jerry. It's a completely opposite situation.
Yes.
If this was Thomas and Jerry, there would be a giant piece of armor with a hammer, which he completely smashed Mickey in the head.
Yes. I'm thankful I grew up on more Looney Tunes than the Mickey Mouse cartoons. You know, those Looney Tunes cartoons were something special. But what a great observation from Han on the evolution of the villainy of things in the context of Mickey Mouse cartoons.
This to me is related to that idea of resistance, that things used to offer resistance. In some ways, our brains were biologically wired to encounter resistance. You know, we are in some ways problem-solving machines. We like to, when faced with difficulty and obstacles, to find ways around, to find solutions.
Mhm.
But when we are fundamentally stripped of, conflict and hardship and resistance in life, we kind of suck the marrow out of it. We just become horizontal consumers. It stops being a meaningful experience, and this, I think, circles back to Han's discussion of the smartphone, because yeah, exactly what you're showing on screen. But let me go back to the what Han said about smartphones. It says it has been some time since things had spines. Digitalization has deprived things of any defiant materiality, any intractability. They have entirely lost the character of obecere. They offer us no resistance. Informatons do not have spines that must be handled with infinite dexterity. Rather, they closely follow the contours of our needs. No one gets hurt from handling a smooth smartphone. And and it's perfect because I mentioned Tom and Jerry, and what's the great symbolism of the mouse if not the mouse trap? And the whole thing is about how can the mouse get the cheese without triggering the mouse trap and being stuck.
Mhm.
And the in that way, smartphones are no mousetrap. There's just the image of the cheese, but there is also no cheese. So
Mhm.
when there is no
Like,
hardship, there is
the
also no
cake is a
reward.
lie? Are you saying the cake is a lie?
Exactly. There's just the image.
It's yeah, it's so much there, man. When it comes, I really like Tan's point about the villainous things being that resistance, in the sense that if we look at, so there's two things I want to contend here.
Yeah,
One, we look at muscles; they grow only under resistance. We look
true.
at personality under resistance, and I think in the most fundamental way, maturity. There's people have the mistaken conception that they mature into responsibilities, rather it is responsibilities that are thrust upon you, and you mature to reach them.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it is the constant struggle that a human being finds himself in, that develops that person. And it's also why our
Oh,
Lord tells us to carry our cross into our struggles.
you
And that is
know
how we
where
form
I see this most often in modernity?
our.
It's parenthood. People don't want to have kids because
Mm-hmm.
it is hard, but they don't understand that in order to, be able to raise kids, you need to go through the process. It is, in some ways, an initiation into fatherhood. No one is, I mean, in some sense we have our natural instincts and our past knowledge, but nothing can prepare you uh, completely for parenthood, because you can only know it by being doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And people are so scared of having kids because, oh, I'm going to lose my freedom to travel the world or whatever
Be a
people
whore,
claim.
pretty much, for a lot of people. For a lot,
Yeah,
it's like, I want to continue to be a whore, a rootless cosmopolitan who can do whatever the fuck they want, and a human baby represents the ultimate anchor. And
yeah.
it's,
It's a process that forms you instead of you trying to form it. And people are fundamentally scared about letting it determine them. They are fundamentally scared about their natural development as a human being, because for 2000 years we have faced the challenge of paternity faced on, but now we are scared because we don't want it to be just parents. But that didn't seem to stop us in the past. It seems more likely that we are so enamored with this uh, false conception of freedom that we don't allow things to shape us in positive ways.
yeah. I part of me wants to point and pinpoint this to like a the overarching individualist philosophy that undergirds most people's thought process,
Yeah.
and it's that they put so much onus on the individual. What's individualism doesn't really make sense because individuals don't exist in a vacuum. They are born into families, and so in a sense, the family is the primary structure rather than the individual. But the individualist mindset, it begins to. Here's another great example. Here's a great way to put this. This is a quote from Cass, my friend Barry. I don't know what his real name is, but we call him Barry. Great guy. He had a quote about Rene Descartes and the effect of what they call philosophy. That when if you can't know with certainty the outside world exists, and the only thing you can know is your own existence, your psychology begins to form your theology, and you make a god of yourself. And in that sense, in which case, God, how to put this, everything on earth, everything we have is pointed upwards to God, right? It is it's not necessarily reciprocal as if we are receiving things. It is not necessarily that God does not need us, right? It's all out of love, all of a gift. And so if you begin to recognize that the individualist mindset, that we don't need these obstacles, we don't need these things, we don't need these struggles, these technologies are all what my will commands, you begin to realize the theologizing of the psychology makes the God out of the individual.
True. Is that the ultimate question, in the day of judgment? It's, Lord, thy will be done or my will be done. There is no middle ground. And people are fundamentally scared about, letting go of taking the hands of the wheel and trusting providence. Jesus take the wheel.
Jesus take the wheel. Exactly.
Exactly. And in that sense, going back to the fatherhood sense, there is no, relating to the Han quote, there is no object with more spines than a baby, because babies cry a lot, they poop themselves. It's not easy to be a father, a mom, to be a parent. And we are in a lot of ways scared of hardship. We don't want resistance. We want, the smartphone. The smartphone offers no resistance. The baby offers the most resistance you're gonna face in your life. It is the ultimate other.
So true. Again, I'm so glad we do this because I looked into other Han commentaries. It's all left-wing atheists and like communist or post-structuralist types. There's not a single Christian I could find who was doing commentary on Han. Which really irks because so much of his stuff just seems so Christian, and he is a Catholic himself, so it makes sense. It's so. Yeah, it's a very real spiritual element and a theological element in Han that is just completely absent in the commentary and the critical analysis the left-wing people are doing in regards to his work.
So true.
I looked it up. I think my last episode on the Agony of Eros is like the only YouTube video reviewing Han from a right-wing perspective. I cannot find a single one.
It's probably going to be the only one about non-things as well.
Yeah. Which is good.
People discuss Han. I see a lot of people discussing, his whole canon, but individual books, I think it is the only way.
Yeah, it's why going forward it's going to be a lot more Han. I'm going to try, listener now, hold me to this, please. Once a month or every other month, I'm going to try to get out a Han episode. It's going to be probably another 3 hours long. It would be a time crunch. It'd be time consuming, but I think Han deserves and needs a good right wing commentary. I think his ideas are. Did you see Pope Francis quoted Han?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so this is probably me being a little over enthusiastic, but I think Han and Pope Leo XIV are going to represent a new Catholic paradigm, in the same way that William Navarre and Pope Leo XIII kind of led to the creation of distributism under Zeke Tesla and Hilaire Belloc. I think Han and Pope Leo XIV are going to do a similar thing with a new distributism for the digital age. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that'd be a great paradigm for the Catholic Church to operate in. I think the the critique of psychological servitude, as some people refer to Han's work, is it's important because it's so real. The servitude of the mind is just as important as the servitude of the body, and it's actually more important because at least in previous days, the slave had a free mind. I don't know if people really have free minds today.
Yeah, there is this emergent aversion to technology, especially in young people, that there is this void of narrative. We have critique after critique after critique, which is needed, but we have no positive direction. We can only say, technology bad, but what now?
Exactly. And note, listeners, the solution is not mailing packages. Okay, I have to make that explicitly clear. Do not mail packages. We are critiquing tech, and I feel like that needed to be said.
Use the post office correctly.
Yes, use it for its proper ends. Honestly, my biggest critique of Ted Kaczynski is I think he mailed. No, I'm not. We're going to talk about that one later. That's a joke for after the stream.
Okay.
I just realized we're live right now, and I can't edit this out if I make that joke. Okay, so I think we have two more chapters here. We have Stillness, and we have his final, more autobiographical chapter.
Okay.
I want to say on the final chapter here, on the jukebox.
Oh, that's the most symbolic one, I guess.
So beautiful. And here's my take on it. Either A, we need to read it in its entirety, or B, leave it off and let the viewer read it for themselves. What do you think?
Ooh.
No, it's a tough one. There's a whole episode in this last chapter, honestly. A whole hour-long podcast can be happening.
The thing about this last chapter is that it ties up the whole book so well.
Yeah.
That I think we should read it.
You think we should read it? Okay, we're going to read it then. Let's do it. Is there anything you want to say on Stillness, or we've already talked about Stillness a bit with the lingering?
I just wanted to talk a little bit. I mean, we're going to end it after the last chapter, right?
Yeah.
So there's some points I wanted to make, some other notes that I had.
Okay.
Mainly the Heideggerianism of Han, because he talks a lot about hand and fingers. That is one of the main things of the book, because Heidegger has this conception of the hand as that which apprehends and let us get intimate knowledge of things. But if we think about it in our relation to technology, we went from handling things with the hand, the hammer, we grab the hammer with the hand, and with it we can apprehend the techniques. But now we have moved on to the fingers, and the fingers, as he points out, cannot grasp and comprehend the object in its entirety. It is merely an instrument of choice, of guidance. So we are not in control anymore, and we cannot apprehend and know things. We can just let it guides us, and we can only point to things we like or don't like. So, as he said, we've moved to the realm of love, to the realm of like. We cannot, get this whole experience of we love something or someone. We could only go to the realm of like, oh, I like this person, I like that person, or I like this video, or I like that video. And so I think that's a very important point. Another discussion about that he brings in the book is about pornographic versus erotic, and if I'm not mistaken, he does expand it in his other books. I think in the Agony of Eros. But in relation to technology, as we've discussed, the information age, or the age of non-things, is fundamentally pornographic because it lays it all bare, but with no sensuality or aura or meaning behind it. There's just this constant bombardment of information without any, allure. It doesn't brings us to it, it comes to us. So there is no, you know, this whole attractiveness to it. It's just laid bare, and we get desensitized to it. We get fed this stream of hyper exposure to the sense that it doesn't affect us anymore.
Mhm.
And as we know about these cycles of desensitization, is that we tend to seek higher and higher hits of dopamine. So
You
we go
chase
to
the
the,
dragon, as it were,
yeah.
the heroin
So
expression.
in this context of information, the more someone is inserted in this realm of information drowning, the more they seek to drown their thoughts in more and more slop until you reach, irreversible brain rot, which is probably going to be a future medical condition.
I think it's be very funny that. So one of my takes is that every society has had natural slaves. We just had different terms for it, be it the indentured servitude, the indentured servitude, the serf, the natural slave, the slave, to even the criminally insane who can't help but resist the temptations for violent actions. It's very funny to me that I imagine there'd be a classification of workers just labeled brain rotted.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a new serf class of brain rotted individuals.
It's gonna look very funny on the history books
They're just
or
gonna
the
be
history non-books.
out there hammering with the hammer with the chisel going skibbity toilet. Oh,
Yeah.
ibuprofen. What's granted? Have you seen the ibuprofen meme?
No.
Okay, so this is a very funny meme. There's a guy who rubs a lamp and a genie pops up, and the genie goes, "You get one wish," and he goes, "I want to change the word goonin to profan." And he goes, "Your wish is granted." And he hands him a bottle of ibuprofen and says, "Can you read this for me real quick?" And it's just ibuprofen. I just think it's like, oh, you be profan all night, huh? It was just funny, but it's a little brain rotted. It's funny how something can start off like that's the setup. There's a punchline. There's a joke. It's got a story. There's a bit of a narrative to it. It's him finding the lamp. It's all animated. That gets boiled down to from that first video to people just yelling, "Ooh, ibuprofen," and that's all they say. Again, the same processes undergo from a meme into brain rot.
Yeah.
I think that's a point
And
to
that's
the point about all information kind of continuously degrade.
and there is that degrading. There is that lowering of language from its most highest achievements to the most bare-bone levels of communication, where it is indistinguishable from babble. Just just to finish up, there is this one quote about hands and fingers, which I think it's one of the central themes of the book. And it goes, only the hand receives the gift of thinking. For Heidegger, the typewriter is the precursor of the computer. It turns the word into information. The typewriter foreshadows the digital. The construction of the computer is made possible by the process in which language is increasingly becoming merely an instrument of information. The hand does not count or compute. It represents the non-countable, the non-calculable, the singular as such, which as one in its singleness, it's uniquely unifying, one that precedes all number. And this quote is very strong, and I think very theologically charged. If we think, for instance, about the hand as the hand of God, because in traditional depictions of the Trinity, the God the Father is depicted as a hand, the Manos Dei. So the hand is this oneness, this singularity, this sovereignty of God, while if you think fingers, they are more like directions or points. So you have the hand as this unifying thing, and the fingers as this chaos, as this pointing to various directions, and I think that's a fascinating idea.
As you were saying that, I was staring at my painting of the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel when God's hand is reaching out to Adam.
Yeah,
I have a zoomed in painting of that where it's just the hands reaching across, and I'm going to be staring at that painting, thinking about what he just said for like the next hour. There's a lot there.
yeah. I think the symbolism of the hand is very powerful in that sense.
Yes.
Because the hand is a unified thing. It kind of is a unified will, and we have kind of lost it in the digital age. We don't have an unified will. We have several stimuli centers going to different directions based on what we see on screen. It again, it falls back to the loss of narrative. We have no through line. We are just fed this chaotic arrangement. But okay, let's get to having a jukebox.
I love Han and how excited I get very excited when reading Han because his books are so good and there's so many observations. But at the same time, there's a melancholy that washes over you with every observation. That you just become a slightly more melancholic after reading Han.
He is truly the ultimate sensitive young man. Also,
yes. Real quick, I have to say, I don't think I've said a photo of Han on the podcast before. I want to show you guys. This guy has immaculate style and drip.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has aura.
He does. Yes. Every photograph of him has aura. How well is that visible on the screen here? Okay, that's pretty visible. Let me find out. Oh, here it is. Look at that. The pipe, the leather jacket. Look at him with the scarf. The scarf, man. Come on. There's just a.
That one where he's hunched and with his hand together is very.
This one?
No, the
one
on the right.
This one.
Yeah, this one.
Let me click it up here. Yeah, I mean, look at the aura on that. The hand slightly.
Look what's in the background. Look what's in the background.
Yeah, the piano.
Yeah.
He'd probably be a really fun guy to talk to.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that aura. Anyway, I feel like that was important to see. This is one thing I will say when it comes to philosophers. If you don't have aura, I don't really want to read you.
True.
You don't know how to have aesthetic, like the depictions of yourself. This is why my respect for Curtis Yarvin went up when he started like getting someone to help him dress, and like he got rid of his like he worked on his image and enough that I'm like, okay, no, I respect that. That's a positive sign. An example of someone who has like I feel like has a, it's not necessarily aura, but it is an aura in a sense. Slavoj Zizek.
He does has a different kind of aura. Yeah.
He is what I imagine Diogenes look like.
Yeah.
He's someone we should actually talk about Zizek sooner or later because like I've been listening to a few things from him. He's interesting. He is a very interesting thinker.
Yeah. He's also someone who must be claimed by the right wing.
Yes. Well, I've been trying to get the right wing to claim Mark Pfister for a bit because I think capitalist realism, his takes on music, that's another book that could be included in these Han series. Is Mark Pfister. Okay, let's do the jukebox.
Let's do it.
Because we've almost hit.
If you want me to chime in and read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll read it. You can just chime in. We can. How many pages? It's not that many pages. It's only like 10 pages. We can knock this out. We've already gone for 3 hours. I told you to the listener.
We could have gone on for a lot more.
Yes. When Gutsavo and I were planning this, we were talking about how the hard part was Han isn't finding things to commentate on, it's finding what to not commentate on. And so while discussing the appropriate lengths for this episode, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. We're just going to start recording. And if I have to clip this into 4 different episodes, I'll clip it into 4 different episodes. Which I might do. I might just take this live stream down and clip it out into 4 individual episodes.
Nice.
But here we go. Excursions on the jukebox. Early one evening in the autumn of 2017, I was riding my bicycle through the Schoenberg, again German, area of Berlin when there was a sudden heavy downpour. Cycling too fast down the slightly sloping crest, again German, I skidded and was thrown to the ground. As I slowly got to my feet, not without difficulty, I found that I was in front of a shop selling jukeboxes. Having been familiar with jukeboxes only from literature and films, I was curious and entered the shop. The elderly owner seemed a little surprised by my visit. Apparently, it was rare for someone to just end up in their shop. I felt somewhat as though I were in a dream. Along the shop's many old objects and props, I somehow felt I had fallen out of time. It was probably also my painful fall that had made my perception hover. The fall created a rift in time. I time traveled into the world of things. What a great first page. Again, a good. Again, this chapter really is a great it's the culmination of the whole book.
It's a great tie-in.
And it's also a great look at Han himself. This is the most autobiographical I've ever seen him get. So it was a fascinating little window. I was charmed by the jukeboxes. I went from one to the other, as in a fairy tale world of wonderful things. The shop was called Zukeland. The things in the store, things in it shone with an alien beauty. A turquoise jukebox made by AM1 in particular caught my attention. It was a model from the 50s in that Servile Age of jukeboxes. They were designed to mimic certain stylistic features of automobiles, such as fins, panorama windows, and rear light. Today, they just look almost like a chrome-covered car from the 1950s. I immediately fell in love with this turquoise-covered jukebox with a large panorama window. I was determined to own it. At the time, I lived in a flat that contained only an old grand piano and a metal desk from a doctor's surgery. I needed to be in an empty flat. Neither the grand piano nor the desk distracted from the emptiness. They even intensified it. Alongside them, I was a third thing, to be still, nameless, sing in space. That would mean redemption. Emptiness does not mean that there is a space with nothing in it. It is an intensity, an intense presence. It is the spatial appearance of stillness. Emptiness and stillness are siblings. Nor does stillness mean that there are no sounds to be heard. Certain sounds can even emphasize it. Stillness is an intense form of attentiveness. I like that point out certain signs can intensify it. This is going to be a bit of a Quinn's anecdote, but you know the Green brothers, like John Green and Hank Green, the shit lib guys on YouTube?
No, I don't know them.
Okay, so they were much more popular when I was younger. They're very shit lib coded. They do documentary series for PBS now,
Oh.
But one of them asked, they had a fun format where they would each do a video one week and they would open it saying, "Hey John," and they would then talk to their brother and then they go into the video. And they would kind of build off each other's content, which is a very interesting style.
Uh-huh.
And one of the questions they asked the audience is, what is the most quiet place you know? Because they were talking about the importance of being quiet, the importance of quietness. And all the answers were things that were noisy, but we didn't recognize it as noisy. It was airports. It was nature, even though nature is full of trees rustling, birds chirping, bugs buzzing, water rushing through the creek. These aren't silent areas, but it was they intensified the silence because they didn't consider them noise in a typical sense because they were part of the natural order of things. Noise is what disrupts the everyday experience of the order.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's one of the few things that was fascinating, but I remember I heard that years ago, and it just stuck with me as the importance of I've experienced absolute silence. When I was in the Northern Rockies, I was in the mountains. There was no wind. You could not hear the wind. There was no creek, so you couldn't hear the creek. And it was winter, so there was no bugs. I could not hear. I turned my truck off. I'm not making this up. I could hear the oil in the vehicle drip. I could hear the AC coolant drip. I could hear the blood rushing in my veins.
Damn.
It was so quiet. It was unnerving. Incredible experience, though.
This way of thinking kind of highlights this idea of another perception of silence. Because if you take Han's idea seriously, we would say that a bedroom with nothing on it, but just a mattress and a cell phone, is much more noisy than a full apartment or with just analogical objects. Because the smartphone is such a noisy thing, despite being so small, that it kind of takes all this space compared to a harmonious arrangement of a Victorian house, for instance.
Divine providence just struck as we were talking about the noisiness of the smartphone. I was thinking about how even when it's on silent, the vibration makes the noise, and my phone was vibrating.
Dude.
Divine providence, buddy. Oh. Okay. But no, that is so true about a busy room could be more silent and more empty because of the way things are placed that intensify the absence of things. To me, it reminds me of the his quotes earlier on the adornment. Like I can't.
That was what I was thinking too.
It's a quote from one of the founding fathers. I think it was John Adams, who said no, was it Lincoln? I can't remember who it was. But somebody said the Bill of Rights is like the silver frame that adorns the Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence is the silver frame that adorns the golden Constitution. And we say we were about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, whatever. The metaphor of the silver frame, the frame being more important, the frame being as important as the painting, because it is the portrait in which you view the painting. The adornment around it matters just as much as the painting itself. Or another great example, women in jewelry. Yeah. Growing up with my Protestant church, we knew these family, they were hyper Pentecostal. As in the girls couldn't wear pants. They only wore skirts. No makeup, no bracelets, no necklaces. And I remember thinking, you guys are, remember I almost said to them, because I was like 14, 15, I almost said, you guys are very beautiful. God gave you beautiful bodies. You should adorn it with beautiful things.
Yeah.
It's just that simple, that the adornment is, it's not a secondary beauty. It's a part of the beautiful, Another good example is a globe, right? If you have a globe, that's cool, that's pretty. But if you have a good stand, like a good wooden stand to go with the globe that holds it at the right angle, and it has the numbers and the details on it to help you get the angles just right to calculate things, it's way more beautiful than just a flat basketball globe type looking thing. The adornment adds to the beauty.
Yeah, true. It is related to the idea of narration, of meaning, because when you are adorning something, you are inserting it in a narrative, while when it is just bare, it has no place, it has no time.
And this is why I hate canvas paintings, and it's just the wooden canvas and the painting, and there's no way to put a frame on it. I think that's evil art. I don't care what it's depicting. It's evil art because it's not. It's privating the nature of what art is to be beautiful, and you are robbing it of a key characteristics of its beauty.
This reminds me of it is related to Hans quote that we were just reading about how his jukebox is coded by cars. How cool is that?
Yes. I'm resisting the urge to Google the jukebox because I want the mental image more than I want the physical image,
Yeah.
I don't want the digital information. If I ever see that jukebox, I want to see it in person. I don't want to see a picture of what that jukebox might look like,
Yeah. Because we used to do things. We used to be a proper country. We used to do great things.
Yes.
I remember seeing a photo of a pastor's, the place where they talk about it. How do you say it? A puppet in English?
The pulpit.
A pulpit? A pulpit?
Pulpit.
Yeah, and they made I think it's in Poland where they have a whale, like the Jonah story, a whale puppet. It's so cool. Why did we stop doing this thing? And now
we have these dumb aluminum looking ones.
Yeah, the glass ones.
Oh, the whale of pulpit. That's awesome. That is sick. You mentioned whale, my mind starts thinking of Jonah, and I think Jonah is like the greatest Old Testament Bible story.
True.
I think Jonah's up there with Job for literary genius.
Literally prefigures the resurrection.
Yes. There's so much in Jonah that we can't even get into that topic of Jonah. That's a whole other podcast to talk about Jonah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Nor does stillness mean that there are no empty sounds to be heard. Certain sounds can even emphasize it. Stillness is an intense form of attentiveness. Things like a desk or a grand piano create stillness by attracting and structuring attention. We are surrounded by nonsense, by informational distractions that fragment our attention. Even when they are noiseless nonsense, thus destroy stillness. is a great example of this. My parents have like several different Alexa devices, and they have it set up to alert them when a package is being shipped or delivered. And so
Bruh.
even in a perfectly still house, you just be quiet, still, and then randomly at any moment you can just get a beep Amazon notification. Your package has arrived.
Ah, that's just hellish, man.
It is. It's a prison warden who mocks you as you're in prison.
That just goes back, man. That ties in the idea that the smart home is a prison.
Yes, it's a smart prison. And what's Jeff Bezos is the warden.
Yeah.
I put the jukebox in the room with the old grand piano. At the time, I was relentlessly practicing the aria of Goldenberg Variation, a very difficult undertaking for someone who has never taken piano lessons. At the grand piano, I felt like a child learning to write. There was something prayer-like about learning to write. It took more than 2 years before I was able to play the whole area without sheet music. Ever since, I have repeated it like a prayer. That beautiful thing, the piano, with its cover rising like a ring, became my prayer wheel. At night, I often went into the music room and listened to the jukebox in the dark. The diffuse, multicolored lights from the speaker grill to the full effect in the dark. It endowed the jukebox with an erotic element. The jukebox illustrates the dark and colored lights and creates a sing magic to which I succumbed. I love that, sing magic. Because there is something magical. Like, you ever see, let me give you a good example here. A really nice like pocket watch.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
an insanely nice pocket watch.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
magic to it. You know, there's a magic to the chain, the type of chain, the clasp, the design on the clasp, the engraving on the back. There's a magical element to it because there's a whole narrative inside the whole narrative associated with the pocket watch.
You know, old things are so magic because, you know, they usually are more ornate, but they also carry with it a lot more stories. And I have this, you know, old coins. You know, I personally love old coins, and just feeling their, you know, texture, their bumps and stuff, it is just magical to me. And what I thought on this last passage is that it's so ritual pilled, it is hard not to notice. Because
Yes.
Han is treating like listening to music and playing the piano as a spiritual experience. And it is hard to have a spiritual experience in your cell phone.
Yes. Yes. So true. So I want to speak to something on rituals real quick. This is why when people say music on a record player sounds better than music on a speaker, they don't
Yes.
mean that it technically sounds better. You could argue in a million different ways how it's technically a worse audio experience.
Yes.
But on a spiritual level, the act of putting it on, the slight bump, the dust, the modern music is so mass produced and computerized to perfection that the airs are missing, and the airs are what bring forth the story and the beauty of the music.
I can relate to this because I have some recordings of my favorite piece of classical music, which is The Planets by Gustav Holst. And I have two recordings, one with perfect digital audio and a second with scratchy noises from old vinyls. Guess which ones I prefer.
Yes, it's exactly. Another thing on what's so I don't smoke weed anymore. But when I was in my younger days, the electronic carts I always thought were lame in comparison to the bong. And it's all lame because it's all weed, and weed itself is lame.
Yeah.
But the ritual of packing the bong, of lighting it, of pulling it, of passing it, is way more. It makes the act of smoking with friends, which I think is the only time you can justify smoking weed, is either in an aquarium or you have 5 friends and you're going to have a specific kind of conversation. I think weed can be communal in a way where it's not disastrous.
Again, it's resistance. We like these things because they are they have resistance. The recording of the music with the scratchy sound, it's resisting your ears, which just wants a clean digital sound, and that's why we
This,
cling to it. We cling to
this,
the bumps on the old coin because it's resistance. It's something different.
this is the argument for pipes over vapes. The
True.
struggle to pack the pipe compared to the ease of this hitting the vape whenever you want. And I've been vaping this whole podcast because I have a problem with I'm addicted to nicotine, but whatever. But no, the importance of ritual and elevating the ritual will elevate any task, any action that is being taken, a proper ritual associated with it, which is why I stand by. Even if you are an atheist, you should pray over your food because that is a ritual associated with the meal that can elevate it. So even if you don't believe in God, you should still pray over your food because it adds a ritual to consumption.
You know what I just remembered is fasting. Fasting makes food so much more
Yes.
conscious to us.
Yes. That's a great example of the resistance and the ritual. Again, there's so many religious parallels or religious themes in Han that just go completely ignored by the
I mean,
commentary.
he's literally talking about prayer here. You can't get
Yes. Okay, where were we? Where was I? Yep. The jukebox makes listening to music a highly enjoyable visual, acoustic, and tactile experience. The listening is, however, very complicated and time-intensive. As my jukebox is not in constant use, it first has to be plugged in. It takes some time for the valves to warm up. After inserting the coin, I love this part about the coin, by the way. I carefully press the buttons with a loud rattle. The home machine comes to life with a buzzing noise. The record changer begins to move its arm, grabs a record, and with great precision puts it on the turntable before the needle drops. A tiny brush clears the record of dust. The whole procedure resembles a magic process, a sing magic that astounds me every time. The jukebox brings forth sing noises. It gives the impression that it explicitly wants to say that it is a sing. It possesses a voluminous body. Its humming comes from deep down its belly. It is an extension of its voluptuousness. Digital sound does not make any sing noises. It is bodiless and smooth. The sound brought forth by the jukebox from the record and valve amplifier differs fundamentally from digital sound. It is material and bodily. The roaring sound touches me, gives me goosebumps. So real. So real. Anyone listening, if you have a record player or if you've ever listened to music on a record, it's a different experience. It's not at all the same. Live music and a record, and then your Apple AirPods and Apple Music, it's not the same. It's Apple Music is like yeah, fuck. I want to say it anyway. Listening to Apple Music instead of a record is like using a condom. It's gay. It's privating the nature of what the act is supposed to be accomplishing.
So true. This whole chapter is so whimsical.
Yes,
this guy is so happy.
It's such a whimsical. I might just send the chapter to a friend. Like, listen, I know you haven't read Han. I know you're a little hesitant on Han. Just read this chapter. You love Chesterton. I know you're gonna love this chapter. It's so whimsical.
The way he talks about the things working as magic kind of reminds me of those old Renaissance mechanical things, these automatas that were made for these chambers of wonder, that were literally just that, chambers of wonder. They are made to make you feel this feeling of wonder, of wonderfulness. So people were purposely making the world more magical instead of trying to disenchant it.
Yes. And another great example of that, at least in my life, is a Disney World. Going to Disney when I was a kid, and go to Disney and ride Haunted Mansion, which is maybe the greatest ride for this kind of experience because of how the tech is done for the holograms, for the ghosts, for the music, for all of it, for the mirror distortions. It's incredibly magical in its technological achievement.
Is it all analogical?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And then compare that to the newest ride at Disney, the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, in which you walk in and watch a video of Terry Crews and
Oh
Guardians of the Galaxy act, where
boy.
you stand there in an awkward crowd of smelly, sweaty people watching a video you've already seen twice when you previously rode the ride.
Oh, come on.
It's the magic is gone. The ride's incredible. Don't get me wrong. Technically speaking, the ride is an incredible roller coaster, but the roller coaster itself is, again, the line itself is an adornment to the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Okay. They go to like Space Mountain. You walk through this thing where you have these different windows and different like galaxies and solar systems and maps, and the music plays and it's all dark, and you feel like you'll go through a hallway to get onto the spaceship. The atmosphere adds to the fun of the ride. It's the line becomes the adornment to the act of the roller coaster.
Yeah. Man, I think we inherently crave the analogical, at least we Zoomers, because there is such an attempt at trying to revive, 2000 aesthetics, Windows 98 aesthetics, because as clunky as those systems were, they were much more analogical and after much more resistance than modern systems, which are increasingly becoming more, railroaded, and we kind of crave that.
We do. I know. At least I know. I do. I know I'm not alone in that, because I know you do. I know several other Zoomers who do. There's I think it's a. How do I put this? Let me think here. Desire for the real.
Yeah.
As in, we intuitively want the truths, and there is more truths to be found in an analogical technological achievement than there is in a info space in which you can't verify things. You can't like how do I put this? If a guy tells me a story, I can verify the story by, at least the simplest way, of reading his facial expressions to determine whether he's telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
There's a realness there that I think as human beings we are beings made for worship, and so we are made to worship God. So we all have this innate desire to find the truth. We all have a summum bonum. We all try to find this ultimate truth. We all inevitably are seeking God, because we're all seeking what we perceive to be good, and God is goodness. And so there's a innate human desire for the real. And this digital stuff is so not real. Like I said, it's a concept. It's a non-object. We want the real object.
You heard it here, You heard it here first, folks. Digital technology is demonic.
So true. Yeah, the jukebox is a proper counterpart. It is a counterbody, like the Lord's grand piano. When I stand in front of the jukebox or play the grand piano, I think to myself, for happiness. We need a rising counterpart, a presence towering above us. Digitalization abolishes every counterpart, every counter. As a consequence, we lose the feeling for what bears, for what rises, and for what elevates. Because we lack counterparts, we constantly fall back on our own ego and make the world that is depressive. That's it. It makes us wordless. That is depressive. So real. The jukebox introduced me to the alien world of 1960s and 1970s pop music. There was not a single song on the numbered cards I knew, so I began with one and simply pressed the combinations of buttons at random, letting myself be transported to the alien world. Among the titles to choose from was I'm not going to list the songs because anyone wants to look it up. These titles gave me a vague sense that the world was like back then. What the world must have been like back then. Must have been somehow more romantic and dreamlike than it is today. In the middle of the jukebox is a red sign displaying the price for using it is a pin thing and Dustin mark. Again, I think it was a German currency, so I have no clue. I am the lucky owner of the jukebox. I have access to a button that allows me to bypass the payment mechanism. But so far, I have made no use of it. The characteristic noise of the coin falling is as much part of the jukebox as the crackling of the record. It is one of the beautiful sig noises that I would not want to miss. I love that so much.
Bro, I love this
so
guy.
real. That's so good. That is,
He's the most whimsical fellow ever.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the age of YouTube, I like the fact that I have to pay something for beautiful music. The coin is a ticket to the enchanted world. Oh, he's so good. Amid all my euphoria over the jukebox, I occasionally ask myself, where might my jukebox have stood throughout its life? It must have had an eventful one. It carries clearly visible marks of its history. I would love to be the teller of its fate, the physiognomist of the sing word. My quiet room is perhaps not an appropriate place for the jukebox. When I sit at my desk, I occasionally sense its loneliness, its abandonment. I am frequently gripped with the fear that I have torn the jukebox away from its place, that there is something sacrilegious about my ownership of it. But where might one place the jukebox today? Losing things, we are all at the same time losing places. I console myself with the thought that my proprietorship. Sorry, in my book it's cut off. Like
Okay.
the Gaslands, I was having a hard time making sense of it. Proprietorship has rescued the jukebox from its complete disappearance. That I have liberated from the drudgery of having to be useful. That I have stripped it of its commodity, of its commodified character, and turned it into a thing close to my heart. For Peter Handke, the jukebox is not an isolated thing, but a located thing. It creates a spatial center. The protagonist of his essay on the jukebox sets out to find jukebox locations. Like a gravitational center, a jukebox gathers and attunes everyone around it into a site. It is site-founding. It imparts still contours to a site. The reader witnesses the thing become a site and a word. I would say that is so true. Even in like today, I go to like the bowling alley. They have one of those digital jukeboxes where it's like a touchscreen and it's not as cool, obviously. But there is something to be said about waiting in line, paying money, and how it works now is you accept a playlist. So one guy will pick out a song, and you can pick out a song, and the next guy can pick out a song. And in a sense, the community of the area, through no communication and all picking songs they selflessly like, has formed a community of people listening to different kinds of music and sharing that music without actually having to talk to the other person. It's a very interesting environment to hear a new song and go, huh, that guy picked it out. He must have good taste in music, Or I've heard a great song and I've walked over to the guy, hey man, what's the name of the song? It's pretty great. And I just started talking to him about the music he picked out on the jukebox.
Dude, I miss this world so much, even though I didn't live it.
Yes. I would say also I used the jukebox to troll because I played Freebird from Lynyrd Skynyrd, and these black guys in there who were playing pool were complaining about the type of music that was played. So I went back over there and I dropped $20 and just played that song on repeat. I filled out the entire playlist with Lynyrd Skynyrd.
You should have gone for Sweet Home Alabama.
I did the same song like 9 times. It cost me like $20. Totally worth it. I didn't even stay for the whole time. I left after like 2 songs. So I had somewhere to be. But I like to imagine they had to sit there listening to my choice of music the rest of the time they were there.
Lynyrd Skynyrd nationalism.
So absolutely. Okay, the jukebox stands in the bar under the window, which is wide open after the heat of the day. Likewise, open the door leading out to the. This is a quote from the guy he was quoting. Otherwise, the place is almost entirely without furniture. What little there is has been served to one side, and they are mopping up already. The lights of the jukebox are reflected in the wet Terenzino floor. A glow that gradually disappears as the floor dries. The face of the barmaid appears very pale at the window, and contrast to those of the few passengers waiting outside, which are tanned. After the departure of the Priest Venice Express, the building appears empty, except that on a bench, 2 adolescent boys are tussling, yelling at the top of their voices. The railroad station is their playground at the moment. From the darkness of the pine to the crass swarms of moss are issuing forth. A long seared freight train pounds by. The only bright spot against the outside the cars being the little lead seals blowing behind on their cords. In the stillness that follows, it is the time between the last swallows and the first bots. The sound of the jukebox is heard. Handel explicitly calls the jukebox a sing. He talks about his favorite sing, a sing of stillness, of mighty objects glowing in the colors of the rainbow. The protagonist is convinced that there is a deep meaning to this saying, a meaning we have lost. Continuing the quote, he says, was that supposed to mean that he regretted the disappearance of his jukebox? These objects of yesteryear are unlikely to have a second future? No, he merely wanted to capture and acknowledge before even the lost sight of it what an object could mean to a person, above all, what it could emanate from a mere object. Han again. Sings make us see the world in the first place. Where non-sings destroy visibilities, sings produce them. Sings open up our gaze, a gaze for sights. The jukebox reveals to the protagonist figures that he would otherwise have missed. All are transformed, animals as well as humans, into the dwellers, into the settlers of the sight. There emerges a still life of the sight, in which everything neighbors everything else, and which it is framed by a community of still sayings. Oh, good, dog. How good is
Bro,
that?
I really love this holistic view of Han, of our place in relation to things,
Mhm.
because things don't exist in this vacuum of instrumentality where the jukebox is just there to play music. No, it is related to the place it is in. Every jukebox in a different place is a different jukebox. A jukebox in a bowling alley is different from a jukebox in a bar,
Mhm.
and a jukebox in a specific place is related to some owner, to people who frequently use them. So every object in this way is unique. It has its own story.
Its own narrative.
Yeah.
And its own narrative that adds to the narrative of the site. It's an interconnected narrative. And it's
Yeah, it is all interconnected in its own meaning, which gives meaning to the other objects, which also give and receive meaning. So it is this interconnected network of narratives which frame our lives, which gives ground to our existence.
you could really sum up a lot, not sum up, but you could really I think you would accurately describe Han as a philosopher of the loss of meaning. Because so much
Yes.
of his stuff relates to that, the loss of meaning, the
Yeah.
meaning
He-
crisis.
I think we have a lot of philosophers that in our modern world, but I think Han is especially good in talking about the things we miss and the things we value that we lost.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if that is a thing. Like how do I put this? I wonder if there's the fervency of his critique of what we've lost. I think that can only exist fully in someone like Han who missed it. Like he's old enough to have experienced it because he came from Korea to Germany.
Yeah.
He is an immigrant into Western culture, and so he sees more fully the things that are missed. In the same way you and I see things as Zoomers that Boomer parents or Millennial parents or Gen
Yeah.
Alpha will completely miss, because there's a sense that we are foreigners to something that we were at the cusp of its dying.
Yeah. I have some a script for a video of mine that I'm gonna share. I didn't even record it yet. Hold on, let me just get the thing. Because I think we as Gen Z are developing not class consciousness, but generational consciousness.
Mm.
So I have this guy here. He's called, hold on, Carl Mannheim, he's a little bit of a sociologist of generations, and he talks about how every generation is a new life because it allows us to look at the past in new ways, and it's a very Han way of thinking. Every person is going to look at the past and see it in a different light from those that came before and experience it directly. And I think as a generation we are developing consciousness and developing a relation to our past and to our unexperienced past in a way which I think is gonna mold our our perception of things going forward, and that revaluing of things that our previous generations threw aside very easily. A lot of those things are going to need to be rethought. especially
Yes.
in the technological sphere.
Yes, technological real estate is another one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
There's just so many avenues and what's
and
things that ought to be
philosophy
our
also.
birthright.
Yeah,
Yes. There's a real
philosophy,
sense of lost our birthright.
politics. There's a lot of things that were thrown aside, which were useful, but were thrown aside to the fires of progress or so-called progress.
And Togen never especially says this, but he did say he would say when he heard like chainsaws going or something that was cutting down trees, he would mutter to himself, "Orcs." And there is a
Based.
sense, yes, there is a sense in which Mordor and Isengard weapons represent a technological march through the world that destroys and because it destroys the forest and the trees because nothing good. Those are
Yeah,
good things, and they destroy
the,
art is good. There's a real
there's
anti-technological bent to Token in Lord of the
yeah,
Rings.
there's a scene in the, I think is in the Two Towers, if I'm not mistaken, of Saruman ordering the burning down of the forest. And it's such a hard scene to watch because Tolkien wrote this when he was thinking about the good old forests of England, which were burned down to the fires of industry.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure you've seen it or not, but I went down a rabbit hole a while back of like the maximize GDP, maximize real estate, build more housing, Indian immigrant types, and they
Oh
were
no.
complaining about the Central Park in New York because like that's a whole area we could build more apartments.
Oh my.
And I'm like, I want every one of you to get out of my fucking country. And even if you aren't American, you would think it's a good idea. You're not really an American. Get the fuck out of my country.
This reminded me of I think there was a post that went viral about like an aerial view of Ireland, which has this pristine hills and forests, and there's like, oh, they say our island is empty, just chop it down. So like, you are absolutely a fucking demon.
You are an orc. That is what you are. You are spiritually and physically an orc.
Orc literally means demon.
Yes. And remember, the orcs were once men.
Yeah.
There's so much in Token.
True.
So much that. So here we go. 3 hours insert. This is the longest podcast I've done in a while, dog. This has been a great one. Okay, let's see. Go a few more pages. Let's wrap it up. The site settlers are without luggage. They are not traveling, they are lingering. The jukebox has a saying emanates the magic of lingering. Handike points out the jukebox imparts an intense presence, a presentness to everything around it. Near a jukebox, everything ordinary becomes an occurrence of presentness. From a sing emanates a gravity that condenses and deepens fleeting phenomena and presentness. The creation of presentness is amplified. Intense presence constitutes the sing magic. With his favorite sing there, anything else around acquired a presentness of all of its own. Whenever possible, he would find a seat in such joints from which he could see the entire room and a bit of the outside. Here he would often achieve in concert with the jukebox, along with letting his imagination roam, and without engaging in the observing he found so distasteful, a strengthening of himself or an immersion in the present, was applied to the other sites as well. And what became present about them was not so much their striking features as their particular attractions to the ordinary aspects. Even just the familiar forms of colors and such enchanted presentness seemed valuable to him. Nothing more precious or more worthy of being passed on than this. So it meant something, quite simply, when a man left, a branch stirred. The bus was yellow and turned off at the station. The intersection formed a triangle. The chalk was lying on the edge of the pool table. It was raining, and. The magic of the jukebox is that it imparts presence, presentness, and intensity to trivial, trifling, ordinary, customary, a fleeting matter. The sing intensifies being, fleeting perceptions, and given joints, so to speak, even bones or a scaffold. They thereby gain duration. Another jukebox is described as a special spatial event. The protagonist comes across it in a lower ground floor bar. on the side street of the Cali, Cervantes, and Lawrence. The bar is no bigger than a storeroom. The jukebox performs a spatial miracle. It sounds right in the room. It is part of the essence of the saying that it creates space. The proprietor of an old man turning on the ceiling light only when a guest arrived, usually alone, was the jukebox. This one had the unusual feature that all the selection tabs were blank. The nameplates in a high-rise apartment house with all the names missing. Like the entire place, it seemed to be out of service. Only the I don't know that word. Alphanumeric codes at the beginning of the blank tabs, but all over the wall in every direction was the ceiling. Records cupboards were tacked with the proper codes written on them by hand, and thus after the machine had been switched on, each time only on request, the desired record, the belly of the seemingly disemboweled object turned out to be chock full of them, could be set in motion. Suddenly there was so much space in that little hovel that the monster was slumping deep inside the steel. So much peace emanated from the place in the midst of the hectic Spanish pace and its own. Again, I think Hans, this is a translation of a German. This book is written in German. It's a translation. And I think this part here actually might not even be German or English. I think it's a translation to German from another language.
I think the author is Italian.
Okay, so it's Italian to German to English. So no wonder it's the reading is a little off, so it doesn't flow as well. Yeah. I can follow Heidegger's critique of technology only up to a certain point. Heidegger would certainly not have wanted to include the jukebox in the collection of sayings. His example of sayings are mirror and clasp, book and picture, crowd and cross. The alliteration suggests harmony among things. Technical apparatuses do not belong in Heidegger's collection of saying. Even the alliteration between jewel and jukebox would not suffice to award the latter the status of a saying. That feels like Han writing a joke.
Yeah.
That's the very
probably very funny in German.
Yes, it absolutely is funny. It's funny now, but it's funny picturing Han writing it and then going, that's funny, and then moving on, you know?
Yeah.
Let me get the last line here. There is a magical side to technology. Metallurgy, too, which was the first subject I studied, seemed like alchemy to me. It is no coincidence that Novalis studied mining and mineralogy, and the Heinrich von Offendingen. No. The protagonist feels in the shafts a wonderful delight in things, which perhaps have an intimate relation to our secret being. The jukebox is an automaton. It is part of a long tradition of musical automatons. The Romantics were fascinated by automatons. There is a story by E.T.A. Hoffman called Autonomata. The protagonist is a mechanical puppet, a Turk who serves as an oracle. He provides answers to all questions. These are sometimes cold and severe, while occasionally they were sparkly and witty, even broadly so at times. At others, they can evince a strong sense and deep attuneness, and in some instances they were to a high degree painful and tragic. But they were always sparkling. Apropos to the character and affairs of the questioner. Amazon's Alexa is not an automaton, but an informaton. It lacks the magic of the thing. It is quite possible that advances in artificial intelligence will soon allow it to serve as an oracle, but only as an algorithmic computing oracle, and this lacks magic. When everything is computable, happiness disappears. Happiness is an occurrence that eludes all computation. There is a profound connection between magic and happiness. Computable, optimized life knows no magic, that is, no happiness. Because it is from the Servile Age of jukeboxes, half my jukebox is made of metal. It has a really beautiful body. Metals are a fascinating material. For many years, I studied their secret inner life. When I study metallurgy, I often notice that metals behave like living organisms. There are, for instance, highly transformative. One could write a treatise about the metamorphosis of metals too. Among all the books of philosophy on my bookshelf stands a book by Paul G. Schwimmann, Transformations in Metals. It is the last book I read before I decided to drop metallurgy for philosophy. I kept it as a memento. Had I read it as an ebook, I would own one less thing that is close to my heart. So good. Then I could pick it up again to remind myself of past times. Things make time graspable, and rituals make time something one may enter, like a house. The book's yellowed pages and its smell warmed my heart. Digitalization destroys recollection and touch.
That
So,
one
so weird.
hits like a truck.
The
Because again,
belief
we're losing this stuff.
we're losing it, man. The belief that matter is not alive is probably incorrect. I am fascinated by matter. We are today completely blind to the magic of matter. The digital dematerialization of the world is painful for lovers of matter. I agree that Boss, when he says that every metal of alchemy is alive, the prodigious idea of non-organic life, Deleuze and Guattari write a thousand plateaus with the intuition of metallurgy. To a metallurgist, everything appears alive. Metallurgists are romantics. Intuits because they follow the matter flow of the subsoil. On metallurgy and alchemy, Deleuze and Guattari, right?
Just a quick one. It doesn't surprise me that pro-digital discourse like Nick Land comes from people who are self-proclaimed Gnostics, because as Han points out, digitalization is dematerialization.
Yes. Which is, that's a good point. That's something to think about. The relation between metallurgy and alchemy proposes, not as Jung believes, on the symbolic value of metal and its correspondence with an organic soul, but on the intimate power of corporeality. And all matter and on the, and that last part is this in French. So the esprit de corps accompanying it. In the course of digitalization, we have lost any awareness of materiality. A re-romanticization of the word would presuppose its rematerialization. We exploit the word with such brutality because we have declared matter to be something dead and the earth to be a mere resource. If we ought to thoroughly, give me 1 second.
These are the Gnostics. The Gnostics are getting him.
Some moron is just trying to lock his car and it keeps having the call alarm go off and I couldn't focus. Okay, where was I? The American philosopher Jane Bonnet, in her book Vibrant Matter, sets out from the assumption that the image of dead or solely instrumentalized matter feeds human hubris and our earth-destroying fantasies of conquest and consumption. Thus, ecology must be preceded by a new ontology of matter, one that views it as something that lives. The music of the jukebox, like Bart's photograph, is an ectoplasm, an emanation of the reference. This music has something to do with resurrection, the dead brought back to life, into the revolving stage. I wanted to use the jukebox to bring back to life the French singer Barbara in particular. I loved her very much. Some years ago, I intended to make a film about her. So on the 20th anniversary of her death, I took my camera and went to Paris. I made recordings by walking through Paris and singing Barbara songs. I passed her house in Rue Vitru, stood in front of her grave in the cemetery of whatever reference word is, and walked over to the Point Neuf. The jukebox makes Barbara a corporeal presence again. It is a medium of presence. To me, the visible grooves of the record are like traces of her body. They are vibrations that emanate from her delicate body. I bought Barbara's jukebox records from all over Europe. The sellers always turn out to be lovers of sayings. A man from Belgium, from whom I bought Discard, put 30 beautiful old Belgian stamps on the parcel, thus making it a beautiful saying. I even recognized one of the stamps, for it had been part of my childhood collection. The packet from Belgium found its place in my drawer next to other beautiful sayings. An old, delicately engraved pocket watch that I bought 35 years ago while studying in Freiburg. A silver Zonhens wristwatch a friend bought for me. He wears the same sort. A human steel magnifying glass that I use when reading my old leather class Luso Bible. A small portable ashtray with a knitted rose on it, and a cigarette case in the Art Deco style that I received as a birthday present many years ago. and a wooden stamp with 3 tiny signs for my name. The last was made out of a special piece of wood by a Korean stamp maker. It is made from the wood of a date palm that was struck by lightning. It is said to possess magic powers that ward off misfortune. The stamp maker also gave me a few small separate pieces of the wood before I left. I kept one of them in my purse. That little wooden thing is my amulet. It used to be customary in Japan for people to bid farewell to things that they had used for a long time, such as spectacles or quills, by performing a ceremony in the temple. Today, there are probably very few things which would grant us an honorable farewell. Things now come into the world almost stillborn. They are not used, but used up. Things get a soul only through long use. Only things that are close to the hearts are animated. Flubert wanted to be buried in his inkwell. The jukebox, however, is presumably too large to be taken to my grave. My jukebox, as I believe, is the same age as I, but it will certainly survive me. There is some comfort in that. And that ends Non-Sings by Byung Chul Han.
What a way to end the book, man.
What a great ending. The comfort he finds in the jukebox outliving him is fascinating to me.
Because the jukebox will be infused by his meaning. And
Yes.
his reflections on the jukebox will live on with him through the object.
I'm already trying to figure out how to get to Germany the moment he dies so I can buy it.
Yeah.
Because that jukebox, that needs a... How do I put this? The narrative power of that jukebox needs to be maintained by having someone who owns it who knew Han.
Yeah.
Right? It can't just go back to a scrap. It can't go to a scrap heap. It can't go to some random collector. Either a museum or a friend of Han needs to own the jukebox.
Or someone who loves jukeboxes.
Yes, it needs to continue in a way in which it is used and not discarded.
This book made me much more sympathetic to collectors.
Yes. Well, as a collector, it made me justify my collection because I was always debating whether or not when do I sell my comic book collection, right? And I've come to the conclusion never. Never.
Because if you sell, it no longer exists.
Exactly. It's be gone. Books, action figures, toys, things I had when I was young. These things are going to stick around with me. My mom calls me a hoarder, but I'm just going to tell her I'm trying to maintain the immortality of the thing.
Yeah, you are literally trying to ground humans. You're doing metaphysical work here, buddy.
Mama, this is metaphysical. I'm not a hoarder. Stop watching TRC. But wow. So that covers the whole book. Any final thoughts on the book itself, on Han? You know what? Let's actually do this because I own a physical copy. You own a physical copy. Let's wrap this up with a accounting of a story in which we had the book with us and we read the book in public or something.
Oh,
where were you at? What did you do? What's the narrative associated with the book itself and that you own? I'll tell you my story afterwards.
So, I have the physical copy of the book. I bought it from Amazon, which is not great, but I took it to work. I usually keep it on my backpack. I always leave home with a backpack with a book so that whenever I have a good chance to have a meaningful reading in a cool place, I end up reading. So I am at work and I finish my shift and I take a bus back. And usually in these buses and in these peak hours, you don't get to sit. You have to go home standing up. And this day was different. I managed to grab a seat, and I started reading in this bus. And in this particular day, the traffic was exceptionally awful, and I just sat there reading my book, and it gave a certain background to it because while I was there reading books, you had people coming in and out of the bus, going to their homes or going to their night shifts, and you had a fight going on the street, or people yelling to each other in the bus, or the driver saying something, and it creates an atmosphere which you probably wouldn't get by reading at home. So when I was reading about this book about how things can get can get meaning based around the context, it kind of brought me to a meta level about I'm reading a book about things getting meaning in places while I'm getting meaning in a place. I will probably have this memory later, and I
That's
in
awesome.
fact did.
That
Uh,
is
and
awesome.
so that this is where I read most of my books, actually, in traffic and bus, uh, and they always end up giving me memories of the times or of what was happening at that time or which pages I was at. I specifically remember that in that day I was reading about the pages on smartphones. And I while I was reading the pages on smartphones, I put my book down and I saw everyone else on their smartphones, and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, you're
Yep.
spot on, buddy."
Yeah. That's awesome. So here's mine. Here's my story. So I
Okay.
got this book when I got my Christmas bonus last year. I took out enough money to buy every Byung Chul Han book that was currently released. So I had
Wow.
no idea what this book was about. I just like, I like Han. I read 2 of his books. These books aren't that expensive. Let me just buy all of the books he has out. And when I finish one, I'll pick up the next one. Right. So I had no idea what Non-Sings was about when I bought it. I read the back of it. Like this would be a great read one day. We talked about doing the podcast, so I started reading it again, reading in detail. My copy is currently the cover page is bent and twisted upward because I bring it to work and I would set it on the dash of my truck, and the sun had caused the page to warp a bit, and so it bends slightly upward. And I read most of it yesterday, 2 days ago, the second half of it, because the work truck broke down, and it took 2.5 hours for the tow truck to get to me. And so I had to sit there in the sun with the truck not running in the middle of on the side of the road, middle of nowhere. I popped the door open, put my feet on the door, lit up a cigarette, and then would read the book and appreciate the sun setting. And I would just read the book,
Nice.
and it was a beautiful moment that the Sing now has a narrative. Because now when I pick this book up and I see the slight bend of the cover because of the sun basically cooking it, I can remember, oh yeah, I set this on the work truck. I read this the day the truck broke down. I had these thoughts about it. I took these notes on it. I got a call from my buddy while I was sitting there. We talked about the book for a bit. There's
That's awesome.
a narrative tied to this because it's a physical saying. If it was an ebook, there would be no narrative. And when the
Yeah,
Kindle goes out, you throw it out and get a new one. There's no
yeah,
staying power.
yeah, guys. Please buy physical media. Please get
Yeah.
narrative in your life.
Yes. And narrative's not as good for your life. Narrative doesn't just ground your life. Narrative grounds your next generation's life.
Yeah,
It's a continual gift you can offer to your offspring who don't even exist yet.
true.
And I think that's everything there is to talk about. Well, that's not obviously not everything there is to talk about in this book. We didn't even cover all of it, really. We covered segments and paragraphs.
This
But
is our contribution to the narrative.
yes. We've gone for almost 4 hours, Gutsavo. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sitting with me and talking about this book with me for 4 hours.
It was awesome, actually. It
It's
was
been a
my
great
pleasure.
time. Where can people find you at? Do you have any plugs you want to give or any kind of words you want to say to the listener?
No, not particularly. I can link you my channel after, and you can put in the description if anyone is interested.
Wonderful. Please send me that link and I'll add it to the description. As well as in the description, people, there would be the link to Cato and I's episode on the agony of Eros. And I wrote 2 essays that are very related to observation Han makes in some of his works, and specifically this work. So I'll be linking 2 Substack essays into the description. That if you want to kind of get a further exploration of Han saw applied to other mediums mixed with kind of a Catholic theological lens, I recommend checking those out. Not to toot my own horn, but I think they're pretty good. I don't know when the next one will be, or even with the next book it will be on, but there would definitely be more Han podcasts in the future. So like, comment, subscribe, the whole YouTube shebang. Buy physical media, appreciate things, and try to If you have something physical in a saying, try to find the narrative in it. If you have a hand-me-down, look at it. See what the notches and the side represent. See if you can call a family member who owned it beforehand and get some stories about it. Try to find the narrative in the things you own. I think that's all we have to say. Gutsavo, again, thanks so much for coming on. Everyone, this has been the Servile Age. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.